Commission meeting of the City of St. Pete Beach. It is 6 p.m. and let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Clerk, if you'll please do the roll call.
Vice Mayor Grill.
Here.
Commissioner Frisowski.
Here.
Commissioner Marone.
Here.
Commissioner Rouse.
Here.
Mayor Petrilla.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, first we'll have a presentation of the employee of the second quarter.
Okay.
Good evening. Utilities Technician Sean Clark is hereby recognized as the City of St. Pete Beach Employee of the Quarter for the second quarter of FY 2023. During a critical manpower shortage, Sean quickly volunteered to transfer from Streets Division to Wastewater Division to fill the gap. He worked overtime, taking online courses to become fully qualified with the state of Florida in record time. Sean quickly became proficient at his new profession and single-handedly ran wastewater's critical infrastructure for 4 straight months, remaining on call 24/7, every night, weekend, and holiday. He additionally qualifies as a licensed commercial driver and finished a 6-month electrician's course in just weeks, enabling him to upgrade electronic controls at our 22 pump and lift stations and improve operational efficiency. Not content with the status quo, Sean also researched ways to improve our wastewater infrastructure, reducing nuisance odors at the city's master pump station and identifying communication and automation areas that had been causing false alarms. Since implementing his improvements, once common sanitary sewer overflows have virtually been eliminated, this critical system has never operated more efficiently or safely, and Sean has ensured the city is well positioned for the addition of future lift stations as we prepare for the threat of sea level rise. For his remarkable and continuing contributions to public safety and the city staff's mission, Sean Clark is highly deserving of recognition as Employee of the Quarter for the City of St. Pete Beach. Congratulations.
Stand up here. Like one that's to stand up.
You guys are in the background.
I'll just excuse myself.
Are we ready for the Good Citizen Award?
Yeah. Yes, we are. Next, we have the Good Citizen Award.
So I'm just going to introduce, we have a great staff over there running our child care programs, our after-school program, which is a licensed program, and our summer camp. So we're honoring 2 of our kids in that program, Jade and Gavin, and we have Gavin's family all here in the front row. And so what I want to do is introduce the director of our after-school program, Andrea Nicholson, and her 2 support staff, Nick and Anthony, who will be presenting and saying some words for these children with this award. And as a side note, this is something we started doing a few years ago. We bring some of the kids here each year at this time, at the end of the school year, to honor the kids in the program that really uphold being a good citizen. So Andrea, I'll leave it to you.
Hi everybody, thank you very much for welcoming us tonight. I'm going to talk about our first good citizen who had the audacity to leave and go on a family European vacation. So she won't be here for the presentation, but I'll just tell you a little bit about her. She's one of the 2 recipients of this year's Good Citizens Award. She is a happy, positive child. Her name is Jade Young. She's willing to play with any of the children, any age, doesn't matter to her. And she notices kids who need help and she reaches out to them before anyone asks her to maybe go save somebody. When she is asked to help, she does so with a smile and without hesitation, and she's a smart, funny girl, and she spreads her joy and her infectious smile to those of us who are lucky enough to be in her presence every day. And like I said, she's in Italy right now. But now, the man of the year, the man of the hour, come on up, Gavin. This is Gavin Montgomery, and I have had to practice not saying Gavin McLeod. So some of us like that. Anyway, turn around too so the mayor and the commissioners can see you. Anyway, Gavin is the other recipient. He's quiet, positive force in our student body here at the rec. He's willing to play with and help, again, any of the children, regardless of their ages. It might be that he's an older brother, but he's very patient and kind with the younger kids. He notices kids who needs help. He reaches out to them, too, without any prompting. When things get heated with the boys playing any kind of gym games or field games, as they will, Gavin's the first one to go and find another activity and just leave the trouble behind and not get involved in it. This old soul is truly aware of how to be the calm in a storm, and he's a happy touchstone and just a joy, just an all-around great person. Thank you, Gabby, for your calm demeanor, your insouciant disposition. It's a pleasure to be in your presence, and congratulations. And being a good citizen. We really appreciate having you with us, pal.
Sure. Mayor, will you come down for a picture?
Sure.
You guys, you're part of the team. Welcome. Oh, we're lucky. Thank you, Gavin, very much.
Good way to start a meeting.
It is. It is.
All right, do we have any amendments to the agenda?
I have one requested change. Removing item 5A, please.
I'm sorry.
Removing item 5A, the Pinellas County Medical Services Advisory appointment.
We'll put it on agenda in the future?
I don't think it's an agenda item, no, just some processes that are
Okay.
not applicable for this particular group at the moment,
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
Any other changes?
No, I'm good. I guess just that we still will get a seat on this board in the future?
Yeah, there's just some miscommunication on some of the details of it. It's
Okay.
not
Okay.
ready for this group's action, so.
Understood.
I would like to add an item for discussion regarding employee evaluations, as we've got the city manager's evaluation coming up in the next 30 days or so. I just had a couple of questions on that. Hopefully we can... All right, do we have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved?
Second. City Clerk, would you please do a roll call?
Commissioner Fryslowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Marone,
Yes.
Commissioner Grouse,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Grill,
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Next, we'll open up for audience comments, please.
John Kurzman?
Something that I'd like to display on presenting. You can put on the overhead. Thank you. John Kurzman, Bahia Honda Way, St. Pete Beach. So a cornerstone, I think, of the beach ordinance is we've been trying to grapple with density of chairs, or the fact that there's always been a lot of chairs that might sit empty. And I think I've got an idea on how to move things forward, because I think there's something we've assumed was true, which may not have been true. So as you see here, you've got a lot of cabanas up on top that are empty. Here you've got some chairs that are empty, and then it's pushing all the people off to the side. And we also had thought that we would have people waiting till chairs were purchased or in use, but as you can see, there's already hotels that are giving away free chairs with the hotel rooms, so that doesn't really work. So in the ordinance, the proposed ordinance, it would be cabanas could designated, wait till reserved, or brought in each night, or have density limitations. And so there was this is just, for instance, in February or in March, it was mentioned again that the cabanas, and I think they use the word chair or cabana interchangeably, and I think it's important to distinguish that, because chairs and cabanas are very different things, and we really wanted to control the chairs also. But it said the chairs must be brought in, or the cabanas must be brought in each night. In ordinance now for public beaches year-round, and for private during the turtle season. Well, first off, we'll just assume they mean private ownership of the land, because we consider all the beaches somewhat public, but we'll talk about it as if it's ownership that's being referred to. But when I look in the actual ordinances, as you can see, and you can't really see here, but the ordinance for public beaches is that you can't leave on a public beach the chairs or umbrellas overnight. But that would really mean public ownership, I assume. But where, for the turtles, which we refer to, it says, any temporary structure, including but not limited to beach chairs, umbrellas, which have the potential for entrapment of turtles, which may interfere with the use of natural beach for the nesting habitat, shall be removed from the beach nightly. So everybody would think, oh, they're going to be removed nightly. But now let's look carefully at what I put in red. It says, if any turtle nest or nesting activities have been reported within a portion of the beach, then you bring them in nightly. So I believe that's why the hotels have been sort of upset when all of a sudden we're saying you got to bring them in nightly. Because if I was a hotel, what really I would do is if they reported a nest in an area, I might just say, well, that area we won't use unless we're really under duress. But they really own chairs that are normally not brought in every night. So my suggestion is that and when you go back to the meeting from August, if you go back to the meeting from August, people said, let's not bother to do the density work because we have this ordinance, we're bringing them in every night. So I just would like to suggest that the city manager go and do the work that they offered to do originally that they said they didn't need to do, because of the bringing in every night and waiting until the people came, and instead do the density plans that they offered to do here, and just do them, for the land beyond the marshland, and take into account any other things that are being done in that beyond marshland, such as slides, zip lines, and beach volleyball, or anything, and come up with the density analysis. And then with that density plan, then we might have a way to move forward. But we need to realize that the hotels don't really normally expect to bring in their beach chairs every night. So that might be a way to then hit the ground running in the next step, which I believe might be the next beach stewardship meeting. Maybe it's too early to expect that, but I don't want to go over my time. I did have a couple more slides. I don't know if I can continue.
Thank you, John. Maybe we can revisit this at the Beach Stewardship Committee next week.
Perfect.
And just go in a little bit more detail.
I just wanted to bring it up because I thought that it was a way to, if the city management wanted to start thinking about the density, it gave them a reason to
Right.
Think about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
So we did, just one point, we did agree when we pulled it out of the agenda on the 28th, March 28th, that we would have a joint workshop between the commission and the Beach Stewardship Committee. I think their next meeting is the 17th, if I remember right. So just as we move it forward and discuss, because I think just to Mr. Kurzman's comment, I think the hoteliers, this is a big sticking point for them, or a concern. I wouldn't say sticking point, but a concern. Thank you.
Lisa Robinson.
Lisa Robinson, 7100 Bocasaga Drive. I missed the last meeting, but had the pleasure of watching it today. And I just wanted to bring a couple things that came up regarding Kimley Horn on the last meeting. First and foremost, I want to say it's without a doubt a conflict of interest to have Kimley Horn working on our comp plan or any traffic studies, including the one they did for Quarry Landings. I believe they are also involved with that developer as well as the city. Kimley Horn works with various departments within the city and therefore has insight and info that nobody else would have. As consultants, they have influence by recommendations. With that in mind, and as suggested by council, they should be considered lobbyists, and we should know who they work for and in what capacity. The conflict of interest is real, and it simply should not be allowed. Now that we have Ordinance 2022-04 establishing regulations for lobbying and lobbyists, I'd like to point out the following. The registration specifically of S. Elise Bassell and Kevin Reilly from Stearns and Weaver is non-specific. It does not disclose principal's position on an issue, nor does it give sufficient disclosure as required. I suggest they redo their form or go right to Section 2-74, which is compliance and penalties, since there are penalties for lobbyists. So that brings me to my next point. What are the penalties for non-compliance of city commissioners, city employees, and city managers for not doing their quarterly reports? Because I pulled a public records request, and the only person that did all the quarterly reports was Amber LaRoe. She was the only one. So we have, 114 employees. We're one of the largest employers on the beach, and this applies to everybody. And we have a total of 9 reports in 3 quarters. What are the penalties for not doing those quarterly reports? We don't address that in the ordinance, and it should be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. City Attorney, does that...
I would like to just clarify something, Mayor. I did turn mine in.
Sure.
So that's incorrect information.
First quarter only.
I think she was referring to city employees, not to commissioners.
Oh, no. It was commissioners as well.
Yeah.
Right.
No.
Because I turned mine in as well, so...
And I turned mine in as well.
Yeah.
For first quarter, but nobody turned anything in last year. There's 2 quarters.
I wasn't here last year.
You weren't.
I didn't meet with any
The
lobbyists.
mayor wasn't here last
You
year.
didn't meet with anybody, so...
If you don't meet with anybody, do you have to turn in a report?
You put them out, didn't meet with them.
So as we discussed, I mean, Ms. Robinson did contact me, and then I'll leave it to the city attorney. We implemented, that was the first quarter, and as suggested, if we had this discussion, I requested you meet with the city clerk. We can always do better. This is the first quarter it was done. If we can do better, or if people can, if you think that a certain section of the form should be enhanced, by all means, we'll take a look at it. It was new. So, city attorney.
Yeah, and I would like to point out, I mean, the ordinance was, I believe, approved in September, and the first lobbyist registered since its adoption was Elise and Kevin, I believe, last month.
Correct.
So up until last month, there was no lobbyist registered with the city. So I just want to point that out. But yes, if we need to revisit this ordinance at the pleasure of the commission, we can gladly do that.
What are the prescribed, shall we call them, consequences?
Well, right now, it prevents you as a lobbyist from lobbying in the city for a year, and I believe for the second violation, third violation, it prevents you for 2 years.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Bill Schwinghammer. Was I close?
Yes.
Oh, great.
Well, thank you for your time. I'm Bill Schwinghammer, District 2. I was at the last meeting for District 3, and I think most of you were here. And after hearing some of the questions there, then I went and did my own research a little bit to try to understand what some people were asking. There was a woman in one of the back roads who were asking about public services with development and how the city government will pay for new police and new emergency services and whatnot. So then I went and talked to the emergency services people, they like the fire department, and asked them, because I noticed that on 64th Avenue, every time an ambulance comes down there, there's always 2 ambulances. And from what I understand is the reason that I thought, oh my God, if you're going to have a stroke, at least you get 2 ambulances. But that's really not why it's done, is that they would like to have 3 people come to that site, but they don't have enough staff. And the only reason the first truck comes with 2 people in it, and the other one's not allowed to leave and leave one truck vacant, so they have to drive both trucks to the same place all the time. They always have 2 trucks. Well, what I understand is they're doing that because they don't have enough staff to. They have one person, only one other person. They have 3 people on staff the whole time, which means that if someone else calls, then while both trucks are out at somebody's heart attack, they wouldn't be able to go to the other house that someone else is having medical issues with. That's one issue. And the reason she asked was, with all the development and all the extra people, who's going to pay for all those services? Well, it seems to me right now, I'm talking out of school a bit, it seems to me that we're not even funded right now for the people we actually have, because we have 2 ambulances and only 3 people at the time to go pick people up. So that's one issue, but I'm all about right now about emergency services. And with the development that's going on, I don't see, if there's a lot of traffic on the streets, how an ambulance is going to get from here over to a hospital over in Pasadena or wherever they're going to go to take care of these people if the roads are all blocked up. So I don't know if the city's done a traffic study to see how that's going to impact emergency services, but I think the city would be negligent not to, because if what I've just said is actually true or has some kind of truth to it, one would think the city could be sued for negligence of knowing that they can't take care of the people they already have. So that's my issue. I just wanted to bring it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Deborah Scheckner.
Good evening, Deborah Scheckner, Bogusiega Isle Drive in St. Pete Beach. I would like to thank Mr. Kurtzman because he did an excellent job. He's like our beach protector, and I appreciate that. Might have to get you a cape, but we'll work on that. What a great kid we had here tonight, and wonderful staff member that go over and beyond. They like our city. I'm wearing my turtle to remind everybody that it is turtle season. Be careful out there. Don't dig big holes, and just be aware of what's on the beach. So I was looking up some things on the future land element. And it says this goal 2, the city shall ensure that the residential character of St. Pete Beach is maintained and protected while, and here's the contradiction, maximizing the potential for economic benefit resulting from the tourist trade and the enjoyment of natural and man-made resources by residents and visitors alike. Well, we don't really get a whole lot of economic benefit from the hotels. They cost us a lot of money to have a hotel here. We don't get the sales tax we deserve. We don't get the bed tax. And then it also continues, minimizing the threat to health, safety, and welfare posed by hazards, nuisances, incompatible land uses, and environmental degradation. Maintaining this community's recreation, open space, and beaches. Then we got into some hardships. So a hardship is something that has a definition, but it's not really a good definition, in my opinion. And what they do clarify, though, is an applicant's desire or ability to achieve greater financial return on maximum financial return from his or her, should say, or her property, but it says his, does not constitute a hardship. We don't owe anybody anything. I don't care if they paid $222 million for a hotel that, 5 years ago was $22 million or something like that? That's not our job. It's not our job. We're not here to maximize their return on investment. Then it goes on to say, whether the application will have significant adverse impacts on the livability and usability of nearby land due to noise, dust, fumes, smoke, glare from lights, from cars, late-night operations, odors, vehicular traffic, truck, and other delivery trips, the amount, location, and nature of any outside activities, potential for increased litter, privacy, and safety issues. These things are very, very important, and residents bring them up all the time, but somehow they get ignored. We have to take a look at our CUPs and our variances. They're given away too easily, I think. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I have the audio that you guys do it.
I'm currently a resident of Ocas Sands condo community and have lived on St. Pete Beach since 1984. I wish to join the other members of my community in asking for a delay in the approval of the expansion of the Serrata and Tradewinds Hotel. I strongly encourage the commissioners to institute a moratorium in order to review the comprehensive plan that was initiated several years ago. Further due diligence is needed to be conducted in many areas relating to these expansions. Of primary concern is the safety of residents and beach-going guests with the additional traffic that will be brought into our community. Already we face daily traffic snarls and safety issues. Additional traffic will have a profound effect on the already troubling egress problems in the area. Of major concern is the benefit to our local residences and businesses in our community in regards to the Serrata and Tradewinds expansion. New development of this magnitude means more crime, traffic headaches, and more garbage. Almost none of the monies generated by these developments will go towards maintaining or improving our local infrastructure, fire, and EMT services. Instead, the state of Florida and Pinellas County will be the beneficiary of this massive expansion. I employ the commissioners to investigate the business practices of the Columbia Sussex Corporation. Much has been written about their questionable business practices in many states. Is this the type of company we want to partner with for many years in our community? Let's together seek a reasonable solution to hotel expansion by first instituting a moratorium in order to review the comprehensive plan. Thank you for your time. Pamela Harris.
All right, thank you for all the comments. We'll move on to Section 4B, consent items. The first one, the only one, is the City Commission and Planning Board joined workshop minutes, and City Commission, the joint workshop of the City Commission and the Planning Board. We have a motion to...
I'll move for approval. I'll second it.
City Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Marone?
Yes.
Commissioner Grouse?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Grill?
Yes.
Commissioner Frislowski?
Yes.
Mayor Petrella?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next, we have action item 5B, a letter of support for Fire Station 22. So we received from the House and the Senate the appropriations of $2 million, and now next it's going to Governor DeSantis' office. And so we want to send a letter of support. Last year, he vetoed. And so we're hoping that this year he will move forward with the approval.
So, Mr. Mayor, after the last meeting, I was thinking, what can we do to help move it along? I mean, it appears this year it's moving, and the red pen will leave fire stations alone, but I thought if we sent a joint letter and all signed, it can't hurt. I mean,
of course,
the worst I could say is no, but hopefully it helps for the yes.
Yes.
So that was my only logic.
Yeah, and State Representative Cheney said she's going to try to hand deliver it or bring it directly to the office. So yes. Do we need a motion on this, or?
It is listed as an action item, so wouldn't hurt to have a
It's
motion.
on the consent. Did you,
It's on the action items.
so are you handling the consent agenda separately?
We already did.
We just approved that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Matthew, I'm sorry, it's in regard to the Fire Station 22 letter of support. There was no recommendation to the commission on a motion. I cannot answer that question for them, so I was deferring to you.
No, that's fine. Yeah, a motion. A motion's appropriate.
Yeah, it wouldn't hurt to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Shows unity.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion for all of the commissioners of City of St. Pete Beach to sign the letter to the governor of the state of Florida requesting the approval of the $2 million line item for Fire Station 22 in this year's state budget.
Second.
City Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Kraus?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Grill?
Yes.
Commissioner Frislowski?
Yes.
Commissioner Marone?
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Do we have anything on the ordinances that says?
No, that was my
Okay.
mistake. I usually delete that, so I apologize. Typically, it's much cleaner, and no, there are none. So we can move to resolutions.
All right. 7A, resolutions. So we have a vacancy in the Fort Pinellas, and the Big C requested that we confirm their appointment of Mayor David Will of Reddington Beach as appointment to the Fort Pinellas Board for a 2-year term.
And before we make a motion, I'd like to read the title into the record. Resolution 2023-06, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of St. Pete Beach, Florida, confirming the appointment of a member to the Pinellas Planning Council for Pinellas and providing an effective date.
Have any discussion? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 2023-06 to confirm the appointment of Mayor David Will, Reddington Beach, to the Forward Pinellas Board for a 2-year term.
Second.
City Clerk, can we please have a roll call?
Commissioner Frislowski?
Yes.
Commissioner Marone?
Yes.
Commissioner Grouse?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Grill?
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla?
Yes.
Motion carries.
7B, conditional use permit for the Wharf Restaurant Commercial Dock.
Before the presentation, I'm going to go ahead and read the title block into the record, and then I'm going to ask that anybody who is wishing to speak on this, whether it's presentation or public comment, to stand and be sworn in. Resolution 2023-03, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of St. Pete Beach, Florida, approving a conditional use permit pursuant to Section 15.4 of the Land Development Code for the reconstruction and expansion of a commercial Class A dock at 2001 Paso Grill Way. Please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the information or factual representation that you're about to give or present to the City Commission tonight is truthful? I do, thank you.
Okay, and Mayor Petrilla, before we get started, I'd like to ask the commission if they have any ex parte communications, since this is a quasi-judicial proceeding. Those would be any communications you received about this project outside of the chambers, site visits. Now would be the time to cure that by stating it on the record.
I have none.
I have none.
A representative or mutual acquaintance of the owner contacted me for a meeting with the owner. That meeting did not take place.
Okay.
None.
I was at Red, White, and Booze on last Wednesday with code enforcement, residents, the owner, and Jennifer McMahon and the sheriff's office to discuss a CUP application. While we were there, I walked over with Jennifer to the end of the dock, to the south side, and we looked at the proposed pier replacement and pulled it up to make sure it was the exact one, and we looked at it, and that's...
Thank you.
I did not meet with anybody over there, but I did definitely look at it because I wanted to see it anyway before this meeting. Not just on paper, because it's got some dynamics.
Looked at it
Got
over the years,
got some dynamics to it, yeah.
I guess I don't really need to say that. I mean, looked kind of every place in St. Pete Beach, but I just want to clarify that too. I mean, obviously, I've been...
It would have been in preparation of what's in front of you today, so.
Yeah.
Not...
No, yeah. But I was, obviously, when I look at the aerials and all that, I'm familiar with it.
Okay.
Good evening, I'm Brandon Berry, City Planner. If we could pull up the presentation. So these are two requests for the same property at 2001 Passer Girl Way, which is known as the Wharf Restaurant. The applicant is Brian J. Onks Jr. for James A. Miller. They are both present along with the contractor for the dock. The applicant requests a conditional use permit, which is case number 23009, pursuant to Land Development Code Section 15.4M, to allow for the reconstruction expansion of a commercial Class A restaurant dock at the subject property. The applicant further requests the following three variances, which is case number 23010, for the dock to exceed 75% of the width of the property's waterfront and to extend more than 75% of the width of the property's waterfront from the seawall. Those are both variances from Land Development Code Section 6.23E3. And the third request is to be located closer than 10% of the width of the property's waterfront to an extended side riparian line. This is a variance from Land Development Code Section 6.23E4, and that would specifically be on the southern side of the property abutting the 20th Avenue riparian line. Here's just a quick timeline of the application submittal. The application was submitted in February. It was deemed complete in March. The applicant went for technical review committee review in April. There were minimal comments. The comments primarily addressed the fire requirements for the dock. Should it be approved, there would be requirements for a fire standpipe should the dock exceed a certain length, and also there would be requirements for fire extinguishers on the dock. Zoning also asked a few questions for clarification. This meeting has been noticed in accordance with the city's ordinance that included notices to all property owners within 500 feet of the subject property, a legal ad posted in the newspaper, and a sign posted at the site last week. We have not received any questions or comments regarding this proposal. Here's a listing of exhibits. An aerial of the property. It is located to the east of Passer Girl Way, north of the 20th Avenue street end, south of the Red, White, and Booze property, which is south of 21st Avenue.
So, I'm sorry, Brandon, on this, so from the green where the 500-foot measurement, maybe you know, how many feet from the dock to the east, to the residences on the east, would they have received the letter?
Might be able to check that.
Sorry,
Yes, the setback shows under 400 feet at the north end, so they would have been picked up in that radius.
Okay, thank you.
The zoning of the property, at least the upland portion of the property, is CG1, which is commercial district. It has a future land use map designation of CG Commercial General. This request, again, is to Section 15.4M of the Land Development Code, which allows for commercial Class A docks as a conditional use. A commercial Class A dock is any dock used in conjunction with a hotel, motel, or restaurant, and where the slips are not rented, leased, or sold, but utilized as an enhancement to the principal function of the basic facility. Here is the existing survey of the property. This is showing the existing improvements both on the property itself and adjacent to the property. This property is fairly unique for St. Pete Beach in that the land beneath the restaurant itself, nothing covered within the submerged land lease, that's the topic of discussion tonight, but the land under the restaurant itself has actually been relinquished to the property owner due to how long the building has been in existence. This took place in 2004. There was a letter from the state in your packets that explained how this process took place. Again, it doesn't cover any of the area that's under consideration tonight for the docks itself. It's only for the restaurant, but it does provide some unique challenges at this site that other properties don't necessarily face as it comes to the waterfront. So looking at the existing docks at the property, there are two separate docks. The northern dock is currently, staff believes, set 17 feet from the northern property line. The submerged land lease is showing 13 feet, but as measured on the survey, it does appear to be 17. The dock is currently 93 feet long, measured from the seawall to the furthest point of the catwalk. The southern docks, there is a very narrow walkway on the northern side of the restaurant. It expands to about a 6-foot wide wood dock at the rear of the restaurant. There is a small catwalk facility in front of that, and then tie poles that encroach out to about 30 feet from the end of the restaurant at the rear there. That docking facility, when taken into consideration with the restaurant itself, is about 92 feet long, measured from the seawall. So both docking facilities are about the same distance from the seawall. This is the dock plan, existing and proposed. This was sent with the notice to residents within 500 feet. I attempted to trace out the existing dock, which is shown up there in red, and the new shown in blue. Starting at the northern end of the docking facility, the new dock is proposed to be approximately 3 feet shorter than the existing dock. It's proposed to be 90 feet long instead of 93 feet. However, the current dock is 6 feet at the seawall, and it drops down to about a 3-foot catwalk at the 25-foot mark from the seawall. The proposed dock is proposed to be 6 feet for the entire 90-foot length. Moving down to the southern dock, the applicant is proposing a 3-foot wide catwalk on the northern portion of the restaurant. There is an existing very narrow walkway there. It appears to be about a foot currently. They are proposing that be extended to 3 feet. The two catwalks at the rear of the structure are proposed to be drawn out about to the distance of the existing tie poles, which are shown there in red. They are proposing new tie poles in blue, but the catwalks are extending out about to the existing tie pole distance. And the next slide should show the setbacks and the other dimensions a little bit better. Looking at the northern dock, the setback from the northern side riparian line is about the same as it is presently. We estimate that to be about a 17-foot setback currently. The applicant's proposing 16.5 feet. The total length of the dock is currently 93 feet. The applicant's proposing 90 feet, so that is being shortened by 3 feet.
Brendan, I'm sorry, can you go back 2 slides? No, I'm sorry, one more? It's nice with the colors, it helps. Okay. So, go back to your, I'm sorry. So you are, so basically it's squaring off basically it's squaring off the docks.
On the northern side, correct. And then moving on to the southern side of the site, the dock is extending by about 2.5 feet when measured from the seawall. The applicant is proposing for those tie poles to be placed out about a half a foot from the riparian line, or from the submerged land lease line, and the catwalks will also be extended about 94.5 feet, where they were previously 92 feet.
If you go back to the previous slide, what is on the south side, the two walks that are there now, what's the current depth of those versus the proposed new ones?
I don't have those exact numbers. Let's see if I can. I don't have that number available. The contractor may when they make their presentation.
I mean, it looks like we're missing a measurement at the very south side. You have 11.8, 11.8 to the left of that. The distance between the wall of the property and the edge of the wood deck, it doesn't say how wide that is.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's an 8 foot, that's 8 feet.
Okay, so that's 8 feet. Yeah. Okay, so based on this, it looks like the existing dock is about 12 to 15 feet, and then the new one is going to be 30 feet?
Correct. When that, for the catwalks themselves, the existing tie poles do extend out about to the same distance as the current proposed end of the catwalks. It does encroach an additional 2.5 feet out into the channel compared to where those tie poles are currently.
And where is their submerged property line relative to this?
If you see the half a foot marker there, that's showing the distance between the end of the catwalks and the submerged land lease that's being proposed. That bolded line where the arrow with the half a foot's pointing, that would be the end of the submerged land lease.
The half a foot.
So a half a foot setback, essentially?
From the requested submerged land lease, yes.
Thank you.
So how many slips, how many slips do we have today, and how many slips are being proposed?
Their existing lease shows, which was last renewed in 2013, shows 9 slips, and they are proposing 9 slips to retain the same number.
So we're extending the catwalks, I assume. I mean, even a 1-foot catwalk seems to be a bit narrow for safety, and it's no new slips.
Correct.
It's really taking the catwalks out to the tie poles, the last tie pole that usually you have to tie your back end off, your stern off, and you have no catwalk there, and then you pull up to the catwalk from your bow to probably first quarter of your boat to get onto the catwalk. Now I guess you'd be right up against, you could roll up right against the catwalk without the stern of your boat getting in between the tie pole and the catwalk.
Okay, thank you.
If you were a distressed mariner.
So this slide shows the allowable buildable dock area without the variances. Anything within that dashed red line shows the approximate area. Again, this was measured by staff, not the applicant. The northern dock is proposed to be 90 feet long, as previously mentioned, based on the Land Development Code. With them having a 100-foot seawall width, they would be allowed to build out to 75 feet without variances. Again, it would still require city commission review, as this is a conditional use permit, but that would be the allowable length without variances. They have an existing dock that is 93 feet long. They are not requesting any setback variances from the northern side riparian line. That's required to be 10 feet. They are proposing 16.5, which is in line with what they have presently. Looking at the docks to the south, again, with the length of the docks, we estimate them to be 94.5 feet in length. 75 feet would be the maximum length. That would include the tie poles or any other components of the dock without a variance in this rebuild. Looking at the total width of the docking facilities, they're proposing a dock that's 83.5 feet in width. That includes a docking facility that includes all the way to the extends all the way to the riparian line on the southern side and meets that 16.5-foot setback on the northern end. That exceeds the 75% allowable total dock width provided by the code. And looking at the setback again of those tie poles and that portion of the 8-foot wide dock on the southern end, encroaching up to the line of the 20th Avenue street end, that's required to be 10 feet per code. It's proposed and currently exists at 0 feet. Here's some photos of the site. This is
I'm
looking-
sorry, Brendan.
Yes.
The previous chart. So within the red dashed area, there are 9 slips today.
No, the existing dock encroaches beyond the parameters of what could be built today under the
So
current
the
code.
existing dock received variances to be built, it's grandfathered,
It
or it's out of
received-
compliance?
It received sign-offs from both abutting property owners when it was built in 1994, which preceded the current code.
So technically, I'm just trying to understand the request, and I guess we'll hear from the applicant. Like, we seem to be doing, because if they just pulled up the boards and replaced the boards, we don't need to be here, in my simple mind.
They could repair the dock in the current footprint up to a certain point. The code allows for up to 50% of the value of the dock, but because it's never received the conditional use permit approval or approval for the variances that are now in place, that were not in place in 1994, we have treated it as a new case, a new request.
To bring it up to code?
Correct.
Okay. My mind is too simple, thank you.
No. Looking at the frontage of the property and the signposting. This is looking out toward the dock at the northern end of the site and looking south toward the wet slips on the southern end from that dock. Looking from the rear patio seating area of the restaurant out toward the wet slips at the rear of the property. And then the bottom right photo is looking out from the street end at the side of the building and the marina to the south. The upper photo shows the dock to the north, which is 2007 Paso Grill Way. It's known as Red, White, and Booze. To the south is 1901 Paso Grill Way in the background, with the 20th Avenue docking area in the foreground. There are 7 standards for review and 7 sub-items for any conditional use permit. This district, or this property, is located in one of the core commercial districts. It's not within the city's community redevelopment district, so these 7 items are the ones that directly apply. Staff did find support for the request. Going through the items just briefly, the comprehensive plan supports rehabilitation of existing commercial structures and maximizing economic benefit from enjoyment of natural and man-made features when that benefit is not contrary to protection of the residential character of the city. We found that this request would not be contrary to the residential character of the city. This area has historically supported water-based commercial structures, and this application does not propose substantial additional footprint, volume, or features, nor does it exceed the volume of the dock to the property's north or the length of the dock to the property's south. The request is not anticipated to negatively impact traffic or parking demand, and there is no new lighting, lift, or other features proposed for the dock compared to the existing facility that staff would find would pose additional nuisance concerns. The property has not been subject to substantiated code enforcement complaints in 2 decades, and the dock improvements as described are largely to promote customer safety, which I believe the applicant can speak on in more detail. Moving on to the 8 variance hardship criteria, staff also found support for the 3 requested variances. The location of the existing building and property's disclaimer of the submerged property poses unique challenges in constructing a dock that retains the existing layout without moving slips closer to the seawall, which can pose its own challenges. The circumstances at hand did not result from the applicant and the building layout in relation to the existing buildable riparian area, which does potentially result in hardship on the applicant given conditions at and around the seawall. Staff found the request both in general alignment with existing facilities and the facilities to the north and south of the property in terms of volume and length. The variances are minimal given existing conditions, with the deck additions largely related to safety improvements to allow customers to disembark more easily. Staff did find overall the request in harmony with the comprehensive plan and the land development code. There are 5 additional criteria that were reviewed for commercial docks. Staff have responded to these variously throughout the staff report. We did not find that the dock proposal would run in averse to any of these 5 items. Staff finds the applicant has met the burden of approval for conditional use permit 23009. Staff also finds the applicant has met the burden of approval for the 3 requested variances under case 23010. We would, with any of these conditional use permits, begin to comment on concurrency, but we did find that this request does not increase density or intensity of development of the property, and therefore is exempt from providing for concurrency pursuant to Land Development Code, Section 29.53. The request is not anticipated to increase demand on sewer, potable water, transportation, solid waste, or drainage facilities. Staff recommends approval of Resolution 2023-03, which is the containing resolution for this conditional use permit request, with the following 7 conditions. Condition 1, that approval of the conditional use permit addressed in this resolution be dependent on approval for the 3 variances requested by the applicant as presented. Condition 2 is determined by the city manager or designee. The operator shall not place any buoys or other obstructions within or adjacent to the leased submerged land that could negatively impact the response time of any emergency vessel launched from the 20th Avenue street end. And the applicant shall submit any expansion of the submerged land lease for city review prior to state application. Number 3, the applicant shall apply and be approved for a right-of-way utilization permit prior to commencement of construction, should any temporary vehicle or material staging be proposed in the right-of-way. Condition 4, the use of the dock shall be considered a Class A commercial restaurant dock as defined in the Land Development Code. Any conversion of the dock to a different use, including a long-term mooring dock, whether or not the conversion is accompanied by a structural alteration, shall require additional review and be considered a new request for zoning purposes. Item 5, the land within the proposed submerged land lease shall be considered subject to the city's ordinances related to nuisances, and the property owner shall be responsible for the prevention and abatement of any nuisances that arise within the lease boundaries. Condition 6, any violation of the above stated conditions will allow the City Commission to rescind or modify the conditional use permit. And finally, the City Commission may review the conditional use permit periodically to determine whether the order is in compliance with the terms and conditions herein. Staff requests, if the City Commission moves to approve both items as recommended, that they be separate motions, with the motion to approve the variance case preceding the resolution containing the conditional use permit, as the approval of the conditional use permit is contingent on the 3 variances requested. That's all I have. I know that the applicant, the owner, and the contractor are present. Do you have any questions for me?
I do.
Previous slide.
Oh, no, go ahead. No, go ahead, go ahead. I want to go.
You want to go back further?
I want to go back further,
All
so
right,
you
you
go.
go.
No, you go first. Go.
On condition number 4, is there, so as this is written, there's no overnight docking?
I don't believe that's, if the commission would like to clarify that through that condition, we would definitely be open to that. I think the intent is to support the restaurant while it's open. Just going back to the definition, it's the support of the restaurant use itself, so it would only be during operating hours.
So can we, make a recommendation that the dock will only be used during operating hours?
Absolutely.
Mayor, may I add one condition that came up through this presentation? So the end of 20th Avenue is a city right-of-way, and we have riparian rights that extend out to the water. So I would like to add a condition, although I do think condition 2 centers around the fire and emergency rescue. I think we should add a condition that the property owner shall not encroach on the city's riparian rights extending from the end of 20th in any situation ever. We don't have to add that last part, but if the commission's willing, I think that's an appropriate condition to add, because there's already a lot of congestion out there in 20th with parking and with the marina next to it.
Which brings up a different question. Sorry.
No, it's fine.
So the way that the dock on the south side currently looks to be about 12 to 15 feet. So if you have a 25, 30-foot boat, the back end of the boat sticks out past where the dock is. And so that's going to limit the size of boat to where the poles are, right, to where the pilings are currently. If you extend those 2 southern docks to 30 feet, which is what it looks like, you could potentially have a 45-foot boat. I mean, you could easily fit one in there and not have any, if you have a 45-foot boat now, it's going to be almost impossible to dock it there. Now it's going to
If there's enough
extend
water
further.
there, if there's enough water there to put a 45-foot boat.
But now it's going to extend past the dock, past the original pilings into the channel itself.
And that was my question, so if you could, can you go back to one of the charts that shows the old and new?
Yes.
Because that's exactly where I was, because that area, and maybe, do you have the overhead map? The Google map, I don't know if it's Google Maps or, there. So your point, that was my concern, if we're kicking it out, are we going to impede anything in that channel?
I mean, it seems to be safer to have the longer dock if you have a 23, 25, 30-foot boat, having that 30-foot dock. But then I think that leaves it open for somebody to come in and say, I've got a 40, 45-foot boat, and now I'm sticking the back end out into the channel itself.
Will the width of a 45-foot boat, will the beam fit in there?
Depends on the boat, and if there's not...
It's going to be at least a 12-foot beam if it's 45 feet.
So
at least 10 and a half feet.
Do you have the one picture that has the numbered docks? There you go. So if somebody comes in where 2 and 3 is, right, if he comes in with his 45, 50-foot boat, there's nobody in 2 or in 3, he could take up both slots, even if he's...
But there's a tie pole right there.
The tie pole.
In between. There's a tie pole in between 2 and 3.
So that limits it to a 10-foot width?
10-foot, actually less than 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that
Wider
leave it
one.
open for 2 20-foot boats, one in front, one in back?
I mean, the practicality of it is people are coming to eat and drink. No one would bring, once someone's in a slip, no one comes behind them. Because right now, if you think about it, the tie pole is going to be moved out another 6 inches?
The total catwalk length is going to be extended by about 2.5 feet.
Right, but I guess my point is that if the tie pole is only going to be moved out another 6 inches, you still have almost the exact same east-west length. And it would, so that means right now, it would allow for a boat to come in, another boat to come up behind it, and everybody to get on the bow of the second boat and jump over to the catwalk. And they're just not doing it. I don't think the restaurant would ever allow them to do that. It's a pretty dangerous thing to do because your back end's going to be, I don't know how you can, I guess you can tie your back end, your stern off on one tie pole, but I just never seen it done.
Well, and the commission could also, I mean, there's 9 boat slips, so you can limit it to 9 boats.
Right.
Yeah,
As
you
a
can just say you
condition,
can't
and then
piggyback boats in the one boat per slip.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just concerned on the width, because that channel's not very wide. And are we, the question is, are we adding contention at the south end? Because we still have north-south traffic in the channel.
This is a no-wake, idle speed zone all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's true.
It's really already dicey watching boats come in there as it is. I've seen boaters turn away because they weren't confident in their boating skills to bring them in. So, you know, I know we're not really should be operating on a practicality basis, what happens in real life, but we should be thinking about every single thing could happen. But when I think about it, if we just say one boat per slip, I think that might cover it. But I really do think about the practicality of it, and I say experienced boaters are coming in, inexperienced boaters are not, because sometimes you have 3 boats, 2 are going into Red, White, and Booze, and 1's going into the wharf, and they're trying to maneuver and figure out which one's going first and how they're going to get in, because even though there's not, it's a no-wake zone, there's current.
Right.
And some of the smaller boats with biminis get pushed around a lot with some wind and some current. So it's, I think maybe just saying the 9 boats, no more than 1 boat per slip, and then we don't have to number the boats, just 1 per slip, and that's it, if everybody's comfortable with that.
I think on the north end, you've got 90 feet, which really comfortably you could have 3 25, 27 footers, but that's designed for 2 slips on both, on either side, and then...
So you're talking about this far north one?
And also where number 9 is, so that number 9 looks to be about 60 feet, and they have 1 boat slip there.
So when I looked at that from the north to the south, the first thing I noticed was how skinny the water was.
Oh, yeah.
It is really, really shallow there, and because it's so shallow, you can see those cement pilings and the level of deterioration. I don't know what their plan is. I guess we'll hear about it. What their plan is for that north dock. Is it just a safety and health, safety, welfare issue that this thing needs to get rebuilt before the next storm comes and the waves just start rocking those the decking off, and we're left with some exposed cement pilings, or what the intended usage is for that? Is it a drop-off area? What is it going to be? I don't know. Brandon, do you know?
So might I suggest letting the applicant present at this point?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Brian Unk, 625 Court Street, Clearwater. On behalf of the applicants, the Millers, the owners of the Wharf Restaurant, Class A Commercial Dock, I'm also joined by our civil engineer, Mr. Al Carrier. Al, you might want to just come on up. So one thing I want to start by discussing is, and I'm going the wrong way, is the fact that the existing submerged land lease area is not increasing at all. And so the number of boats is already restricted to 9 by the state. And so the capacity of boats is already restricted, and we would certainly agree to a condition from the city restricting that as well. The current dock to the north is 93 feet long, but it's only 3 feet wide as it extends out into the water, which is a significant safety issue. So Commissioner Marone, you're absolutely right. This is a health, welfare, safety issue. This is the whole point of the application. The added width is for safety, and the added length of the southern docks is for safety because the existing catwalks are too narrow, and the current length makes it difficult to board the boats, especially if the boat has an outboard motor, and the extra tie poles are for safety to assist with docking when you have a swift current. It should be noted that the southern docks, even as extended, will not exceed the length of the northern dock, and that the docks to the south in the other properties extend significantly further than even the proposed extended southern docks. So really, this is strictly a safety, boating safety, and also onboarding, offloading safety issue, and also to bring the docks up to code, which was discussed by Commissioner Grill. One of the things, just to address that, Commissioner Grill, that in 1994, obviously, it was a prior code, so you didn't have this conditional use permit process, and in that case, all you needed was both abutting property owners to sign off and that they were okay with it, and it was essentially an administrative thing. So even to replace the existing footprint, which exceeds the current code's allowable area as existing, would require this conditional use application. So even if we were keeping it the exact same footprint. So the whole point of this application is to improve the safety conditions and to establish a safer boating environment, safer loading and offloading environment for our patrons. Another thing to point out, the state also restricts us and prevents transient overnight docking already. So that's already a rule, and again, we would have no problem with that being a condition of approval. But under the submerged land lease, we're restricted to 9 vessels, and we're also restricted to only during operating hours, no transient overnight docking. Mr. Carrier will go into more technical detail, and we'll be able to answer any questions you have. Other than that, we adopt the staff report as part of our application and part of our presentation, and the findings were agreeable to all of the other conditions of approval, and I believe we've provided you competent substantial evidence that we've met all of the conditions of approval through the staff testimony and then also through the pending testimony of Mr. Carrier. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Al Carrier. I'm with Trans Systems. We're civil engineers, land surveyors. I just took down some quick notes, are rather random from the questions you had asked. The first one was the 45-foot boat in the southern four slips. The distance between the actual dock and the middle of the tide pole is 14 feet. The catwalks on those two southern catwalks, they do have bollard-style poles on the outside, so you're going to give up about a foot for each of those. So really, you're looking at a 10-foot beam boat to be able to fit in the first four slips, and that would be very tight. Realistically, it would be an 8.5-foot beam boat. The whole idea when we were asked to redo the docks from Mr. Miller was he wanted to keep what he had, he just wanted to make it safer. I've been there dozens of times over the years, and I can attest to the tides coming in and the ability of not having tie poles midship to be able to push off of and tie onto. So we've added those in the first four slips. The top four slips, the very northern end, we wanted to make the dock a little wider so people can at least pass. As it is now, if there's somebody getting off the boat, they always have to wait. The dock is clear to get people back on who are leaving the facility. And again, we have bollards style catwalk there to keep boats when they do come in that they have something to bang against. As the dock sits now, the southern docks have a single pier that hold up that catwalk. I've seen boats get caught underneath during tides. So I wanted to address that. The walkway on the north side of the wharf, there is an existing small dilapidated walkway. Mr. Miller had asked that we try and widen that dockway for another means of access or egress in case there was a fire or something happened inside the building. People can get out around the outside of the building. I can't remember, one of you mentioned that it is very shallow in that back corner to the west of number 9. Really, the only thing that's going to be able to park in there would be maybe some jet skis or something. I don't think you're going to get any type of vessel. There's rubble and stuff that's all down there. That stuff's probably going to stay there. It's just really just to be able to keep people from getting egress out of the building. There was a mention about a longer boat in the southern slips. The southern slips are really about 23.5 feet in depth. If you look on the chart or on the map, the very slip number 1, for instance, if you come off the long wood deck, what we're calling it, the deck that runs parallel to the building, it's 11 feet to the center of the first pylon or tie pole, and then another 11.8 feet. So you're really looking at like 24 and change or 23 and change. I can't say that boats won't stick out. I've seen them stick out before, but if the IT guy can go to the...
I'm going to fill in for the IT guy. Where are we going now?
If we can look at the camera here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, the camera. I cannot do that. I'm sorry.
So here's a survey of the entire property. When we submit to FDEP and Army Corps, they require you to map the docks, depending on type of permit, several hundred feet either side. So this dock down here is the marina dock, and as you can see, it sticks out fairly, probably another 10 or 12 feet further than the existing tie pole that we found here. The submerged land lease, we tried to preserve the same footprint, but when we actually went out there and surveyed it, we realized that the survey that was done didn't add up, so we had to square it off. You'll see a couple feet difference here and there. We just tried to square it up. We're not going out any further than what's there now. Essentially, the tie poles, the furthest tie poles in front of the building are going in the same location, essentially, and then for the northern dock, again, we had to reduce that by 3 feet to get the dock inside the submerged land lease. That's all I have. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to go over them with you.
Thank you.
I had a question, not so much from an engineering standpoint, operationally. Is there a plan for any additional lights, since now the docks will be out further from a lighting standpoint that's not there today? because at a certain time of the year, during operating hours, it will be dark. And/or any music, any plan to put speakers out there, or et cetera?
I can answer the lights. The answer is no additional lights out there. We did talk with staff about puck lights that get put into the deck, just small ambient deck lights that will help people at night to traverse over the deck. Typically, we don't put lights on the end of the tie poles that are out in the water. We'll wrap them with 3M tape so that nothing shine on them. You're not going to see them. If people are coming up to the dock at night, they have a spotlight. They'll see the reflectors on the end of those tie poles for safety.
There's nothing on there now.
There's nothing on there now.
Right.
And I think one of the staff comments from TRC was specifically asking about lighting, Commissioner Grill, and I think there's also a light pollution concern for sea turtle nesting. So I think that the solution proposed by the applicant on the 3M tape and then the puck lights is acceptable to staff. There will be no speakers or amplified music or anything like that on the docks.
And the other question I had on just facilities related to the docking, there was a comment made by Mr. Berry earlier about fire suppression equipment, and it wasn't clear to me. It sounds like we don't have any today. We won't be putting any in, but in the future, if there is some, we need to.
No, because it's a new dock, we have to meet the NFPA rules. So I'm working through that with Kelly Intez. I don't know yet. We have to put in a fire hydrant somewhere on the site with a fire department connection. We haven't done the design yet, but any new commercial dock or multi-use dock of this nature requires it to be have fire suppression. So the big thing is the FDCs that you put in fire department connections allows them to fight fire on the dock,
right.
And then the fire extinguishers are another requirement that they'll have to adhere to.
Okay, thank you. And for those who don't know, Kelly Intes is our fire marshal.
Yes.
Thank you.
Public comments?
Deborah Scheckner?
Good evening, Deborah Scheckner, Bocasega Isle Drive in St. Pete Beach. I just wanted to make sure that this doesn't set a precedence for more docks along that area. I would be concerned if we had a whole row of docks on that side of our, it's really more or less a bayou that people use, quite frequently. So I just wanted to make sure there wasn't going to be a precedence. That was my only concern. Thank you.
Is there any more?
Anybody else?
Any more?
Okay. So you would close public comment and then open it up for commission discussion?
We'll close public comments and any discussion.
Let's talk about the proposed amendments to the conditional use. Matthew, have you written down what?
Yes, I do.
The proposal?
I have them written down. So there's the 7 that are there as part of the agenda packet. And then, although they're part of the submerged land lease, I do suggest adding them as conditions because submerged land leases get amended from time to time without our involvement. Right. So if you want to ensure that they are there, then we should add them as conditions. So the first one is limiting the amount of boats to 9 boats. Mm-hmm. The next one is property owner shall not encroach on city's riparian rights extending from the end of 20th Avenue.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then
the dock use restricted to the hours of operation.
Right.
So are we
the
being...
operation is limited to the hours of operation.
And not to be too precise, but hours of operation, so if the hours are, I don't know the hours, but if it closes at 10 p.m., does that mean all the boats have to be gone by 10 p.m., or should there be a grace period for people to finish up and leave? So
I think we should mirror whatever the state law is, no overnight boat docking. So if there's any precision to that, something that's more precise,
I just don't want to, the reason I bring it up is someone says, hey, it's 10:05 and the boats are there. Where's the sheriff? And they're like, well, we're finishing our dinner or whatever. And
We could just say boats shall not be moored overnight.
Yeah.
I'll just tell you, my biggest concern about this when it came up was it going to turn into another entertainment space? It doesn't appear that it is. Was it going to create risks and hazards that didn't already exist? I feel satisfied that it is not creating additional risks by going out farther into McPherson Bayou, which would encroach on the navigable boat traffic. And it is kind of satisfied what I thought it should be, which is completely health, safety, and welfare, and that's what it appears to be to me. And so to me, it's satisfied my concerns.
I agree. I think it's a pretty minimal request that, first time I looked at it, it seems like it was all focused on safety. I mean, they're really just trying to rebuild what they have and make it a little bit safer.
If you have a 9-foot beam, do you know what the maximum length would be of a boat, roughly?
Usually on 9 or 10-foot beams, you're talking about 28 to 32-foot fishing boats. 32-foot fishing boat should have about a 10 or 10.5-foot beam. If you're really going offshore, 9-foot beams are probably, I would guess, 28-foot. Some of the smaller boats have 7.5-foot beams that are just the 22 to 25-foot runabouts that we see. That's probably most of the boats that are coming in. There are some bigger ones that do come cruising in there.
So with the southern docks being
That's the largest one.
23-foot long, you could have, so is there a prescription remedy for limiting boats over 23 feet? Because then you're beyond the property line.
So a condition to limit the size of the boat in 1 through 4 to the end of the dock.
I'm just asking, like, what happens if you have a boat, I mean, now it's intruding on somebody else's property, or you're beyond the property line of this particular restaurant?
I have to think about that, because the boat is always intruding if it's not tied up and it's there, because it's navigable water, right? So arguably, if it's navigable water, you can navigate in that area without tying up, and you're in that area and would, I guess, arguably be in violation, but you wouldn't be because it's navigable water. So I'm just trying to think of, you would have to tie it to your patronage of the restaurant. Only patrons cannot exceed, the length of their boat.
But to the extent that size boat would come in, would it extend further than the tie poles to the north or south? Because I think the concern is, my concern is that it would impede the navigable waters westward. But that space between, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but...
You mean east, sticking out into
Sorry,
McPherson
east,
Bayou,
excuse
yeah.
me, into the bayou. I don't think so, because that was, does anyone remember how many feet was from the poles out to the...
So it's 23 feet from the edge of the catwalk that runs north-south.
Yes.
Which is wider than the existing catwalk. And so the total length from the catwalk to where the tide poles would be right now is 23 and a half feet, which is on the smaller end of the average boat. So, I mean, most boats are going to be, 20 feet and above, especially in that choppy area. You're not coming in with a dinghy.
Well, the thing is, they're already coming in there.
Yeah.
They're already coming in at 30 feet.
But it's narrower, the catwalk is narrower, so it's going
Yeah,
to
but if-
8 feet now.
Well, if you have a 30-foot boat and you can get it in there, it's, because they're not changing the width of each of the slips, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like placing a restriction that didn't exist before. And I'm thinking out loud.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how to answer the question without, because it's not a one-sentence answer, because I just don't.
Dock further south coming out of the marina that extends further out there anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my question. I didn't know the numbers, so.
Yeah, but that's a natural barrier of sorts. I mean, you've got an artificial dock versus just the back 10 feet of somebody's boat sticking out into the channel.
Well, people tie off to the outside of that floating dock at the high and dry to gas up.
Yep.
So that happens. It's a real dynamic situation over there. A lot of things are moving, you know. It doesn't seem like boats stay for very long anywhere. So I think that's an issue. I recognize it. I think it's an issue now. I think it happens. I just don't know how we can place a condition on it, because I think it fundamentally changes what's been going on there for a really long time in the utilization of the existing infrastructure.
Yeah, but if we're amending the existing infrastructure because of safety concerns, then we should address all the safety concerns, not just some of them. And one of the safety concerns is, you know, you've got a 3-foot dock, you got a 1-foot walkway, that's not safe, so let's take it out to 3 feet and 6 feet. You know, right now you've only got 8 feet of dock, so let's extend it out to 23, 24 feet to make it easier for them to dock. But then shouldn't we address all the safety concerns and say, look, if it's a boat that sticks out beyond the edge of the dock, that may cause an unsafe situation?
Well,
so
I see what you're saying.
It is an existing concern already, but so are the other ones, and we're remedying some of them. And should we focus on remedying all the, all this? And again, part of that, I mean, that could just be as easily as saying, you know, no docking beyond this point.
Well, yeah, I guess the problem I have with it is because I start looking at the bigger picture, and I see that it's happening to the south, to the north, and the private owner docks have boats that extend beyond their tie poles when they have, and they're allowed to own large boats behind their houses, but the boats themselves can and do extend beyond those tie poles in navigable water. So I don't, it almost creates a scenario where we're looking at a little bit more globally if we're going to address if we're recognizing it as a safety issue, and I'm not saying it's not, then we have to recognize the safety issue across the board. And I don't know if this is where we tackle that today. And I don't know, in my mind, if we approve it, it affects our ability down the road to tackle this as a safety issue and maybe address it in a different way down the road. But again, I'm thinking out loud because I didn't consider this.
I'll ask the city attorney, because I believe any variance CUP stands on its own and does not set a precedent, and we have the ability, well, not the ability, we do review each of these in the future, and they stand on their own in a case-by-case basis.
It's based on the property itself, too. Same with the variances. And to that point, you could address it. You could address this dock specifically today. That's what's in front of you.
Yeah.
Right?
But I guess what I'm saying is, if we recognize that there's some safety issue, how do we, as fiduciaries, as stewards of this community, ignore the rest of it?
Well,
then it's front and center on our plate.
And then the practicality, how do you enforce it?
Well, and if I may, I was going to actually ask the applicant a question on how they police their docks currently, if there's like a dock master, or how do they ensure that only 9 slips are utilized?
What I'm being told, commissioners, is that basically it's up to the boaters, and there's only enough room for 9 boats. And so, I think Mr. Carey can address this more specifically, but I would have significant concerns from a enforcement perspective, and also from a property rights perspective as it relates to this client. I think, like Commissioner Marone said, if you want to address it holistically as an ordinance that governs all of the city, then that would be one thing. but I think Mr. Carrier can put some more practical and pragmatic light on the concern.
Hello again. I think for your concern for the southern 3 docks, or southern 4 docks, is that the berth width is getting less because we're adding extra square footage to the width of the catwalks coming out, plus the bollard-type poles. So each of those slips are getting narrower, so we're going to get a smaller boat. We're not going to have the ability to put a bigger boat in there. I think I mentioned we can't regulate, if you will, a boat maybe sticking out an extra 4 or 5 feet beyond the lease limit. But the only thing I could add is, I've used it a lot. It does happen. I'm not going to say it doesn't. It never seems to be an issue. And the channel tends to be more on the westerly side of that basin. When you come up from the north, you tend to skirt, if you will, the docks at the marina, and you still have a good 40 or 50 feet, 30 or 40 feet before you get, when you're going past the wharf, that there's still that buffer there. A lot of times you'll see boats they're sitting there just kind of waiting for a space. So boats do stack up in front waiting certain times of the day. But I think the answer to your question is we're reducing the size of the slips. It's going to reduce the size of the boat, or the width of the slip's going to reduce the size of the boat. And then maybe I might offer, has it been an issue in the past? I don't know. I've never had an issue with it.
Well, one of the reasons it's probably not an issue is because if you're coming under the Vena Bridge heading south, the thing that sticks out the farthest in the waterway is the floating dock, and you immediately steer to your left to make sure you're at the outside to the east of that floating dock, and then obviously watching the boats coming the other way. The boats coming the other way should be on the eastern side of the waterway as they head north, so they're nowhere near the boats docked at the wharf unless they decide to go in. And I say go in to dock there. So I just think just by a process of regular navigation in that waterway and what restricts the travel already, that travel kind of is restricted by the thing that sticks out the farthest, and that is the floating dock. And I think that controls the width of that McPherson Bayou from a travel standpoint.
For a visual, if you want to put the overhead back on of the existing. And so again, this is the dock at the marina. This is what it used to be Sea Critters, I believe. I don't remember what the new name is, but there's an existing dock there too. But if you draw a line through there, you can kind of see.
That was my question earlier.
Right. Does that make it a little more clear for you all?
Yeah.
And then again, at the marina, there's always docks there, boats that are fueling. So you have that, 8 or 10 foot wide boat sitting at the end of that marina, getting fuel.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions or comments?
Not here.
Do we have a motion? For the request was for...
City Attorney, do we do the motion for the variance first or the CUP?
They have to be separate. I believe the CUP is conditioned on the variances, so you would approve the variances first, and then you would approve the resolution with the conditions that we've added.
Just gotta get the wording.
Where's the variance on this thing?
Number 1.
It's number 1, okay. And does the variance carry the conditions?
The CUP does.
Okay. Well, I'd move to approve variance case number 23010.
Second.
City Clerk, if we may have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Grouse?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Grill?
Yes.
Commissioner Frislowski?
Yes.
Commissioner Marone?
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla?
Yes.
Motion carries.
and I'd move to adopt the Resolution 2023-03 with the conditional use restrictions that were recommended by staff as amended during our meeting by council and the commission.
If that's good enough for the clerk, it's good enough for me.
It's fine.
Second.
City Clerk, if we may have a roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Grill?
Yes.
Commissioner Frizlowski?
Yes.
Commissioner Marone?
Yes.
Commissioner Grouse?
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Number 8, we have a few items for discussion. The first one is an analysis of the freebie service.
And Michelle Gonzalez is going to lead a presentation here. This is an operational review of the freebie program. And I just want to mention before she starts, we do have a budget workshop coming up in a couple of weeks. So depending on the nature and the outcome of this discussion, we'll have a chance to consider reprioritizing funding or changing levels of service to freebie or anything else at that workshop. So just keep in mind, we've got some opportunities to be thinking about these types of programs as we plan for fiscal '24.
The budget workshop's on Monday, May 22nd.
May 22nd,
right?
that's correct.
10 a.m.
So, Mr. Mayor, while Michelle gets set up here, this was you had a request, I think, in the last meeting to understanding levels of service and from some concerns from residents and extended wait times. So we talked about having a complete operational review. And then at the back, the last 2 pages of the presentation are the summary or an email that the city manager had sent. It's 2 months ago now, maybe, on discussions we had about EV charging, who's paying for the electricity, et cetera. So that's the background, just for everybody, how we got to where we are now.
Great.
Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Michelle Gonzalez, Community Development Director. So as promised, we have the service analysis for freebie. Just a little bit of background. We started making changes to our transit operation systems in 2019, and which led to bringing freebie on board because we'd started cutting back PSA surveys through the Central Avenue trolley. And we did an RFP, and we found freebie was the only submitter at the time when we did the RFP for the services. So we went with them because they did also qualify and meet everything in terms of the scope that we outlined. The contract is for 3 years with 2 options to renew. We've currently already have completed the 3 years, and on our 4th, we did 1 year renewal, and in September, we'll be having the option to do the next year extension. Just a little history. So in 2019, St. Pete Beach put out an RFP for the microtransit services and selected freebie. We also had then negotiated with the Sunrunner coming on board, cutting back the service, and then so the first phase in 2020, we had freebie start just in Passive Girl all the way up to the Dawn. In June of 2020, the PSTA Sunrunner turnaround service at the county park was constructed and completed. So then we cut back the Central Avenue trolley service further to County Park, and then that was the next phase of expansion. So then from 2020 to 2021, we only had freebie service covering half of the city from County Park south. Then in '22, we did the next phase, which brought the service up to 75th Avenue. And then this year, in fiscal year '23, starting in October, we're now citywide. So our current operations is Monday through Sunday from 6 a.m. to midnight. We operate 4 vehicles, 2 at 14 hours a day and another 2 at 10 hours. We do staggered hours because we do have to cover a large breadth of operational hours, and this is due to the cutting of the PSTA service so that shift workers are able to get to and from their jobs on the odd hours that they work. And our current cost for the service is $536,000.
So if I can ask, because I didn't see in the chart, since it's an operational review, we pay, my understanding of the contract, we pay an hourly rate for each hour that the car is on the street.
Yes.
So do we have a measurement to know how many, so this is what the contract says they should do, are they doing it? How do we know?
Yes, I mean, the contract is, we set the hours, so it's flexible. There's not a fixed number of contracts, because if you look at the history, we've operated different levels of vehicles at different service hours. And that's further in the presentation, but
No,
we set the hours and they operate them.
My question,
Accordingly.
right, and that's a answer to a different question. Do we have measurements that tell us availability, and are they meeting this availability? 2 cars 14 hours a day, 2 cars 10 hours a day. 536,000. I didn't do the math. If the math comes out, I assume I didn't do the math. So are they meeting the availability?
They're operating from 6 a.m. to midnight, so I'm assuming they're meeting the availability because they're operating based off the parameters we've outlined here. They have,
I understand, but I don't assume anything in life. Are they meeting, and if we don't have the data, then we can go off and get the data. We have a contract, it says, we're going to do ABC. How do we know a supplier's doing ABC?
well, they're operating.
Maybe a different way to phrase the question is, you've got a car, 2 cars at 14 hours, 10 hours. What is the actual usable drive time on one charge?
Oh, so you're talking about the charge?
Yeah, we have cars that sit at Warren Webster for hours and hours and hours. Are we paying for that?
They have 2 additional vehicles, and I guess goes further on to the presentation. They have 2 cars that they have an additional that they charge, and so that there's not a charging break, they swap them out. So there could be the perception that there's 2 cars that aren't being used. Those are just the additional cars. So they're
Correct.
always having 4 cars in operations based off of the parameters of 14 hours and 10 hours, but there's 2 cars that are used to swap in between charging breaks.
Right, because they agreed to have cars available, because, I mean, they need to charge, a car breaks down, but they've agreed that they'll have 4 cars on the road for these
Yes,
hours per
and
day.
that's what they're operating off of.
And my question still remains, how do we know that? Is there a measurement? I mean, how do we know at 7:40, almost 7:45 PM on Tuesday night that there are 4 cars on the street?
Because you can request a ride, and there's the service. I guess if we go further into the presentation, you can see the numbers.
Okay,
We
please.
wouldn't be able to be maintaining the ridership and volume if we didn't have those numbers of cars on the street.
And the cost number here is the fiscal year '23 budgeted amount, or what we've spent?
Fiscal year 3 budgeted amount.
Okay, so that's not cost, that's budget.
Yes, which
Budget, correct.
it's set on the hours.
Correct, right. Yeah, okay, just,
And it comes to $30 an hour.
Per vehicle.
contracts at 31 and change or something, but...
It's 30 and a half, so...
Yeah, $30.59.
Okay.
Fact checking here.
So ridership statistics. Ridership has varied obviously through years to years. It continues to increase. This is based off of the service that we're providing. In fiscal year 20, we did 18,000 passengers, and that's covering just Pass a Grill. In 21, when we were at County Park, we did 47,000, 22, 87,000, and now in 23 to date, we've, through March, we're at about 55,000.
And the conclusion that's leading to fewer cars on the road is based on just the fact that people are riding freebie?
Well, you could record the
Who made
number
that
of
conclusion?
rides.
Who's concluded that?
Well, what we're showing is we've moved 54,000 people and 26,000 rides. In 22, we've had 87,000 for 43,000 rides. So those are the numbers that would have been individual trips separately. So there's more passengers and less rides that have been completed.
Are we getting any sense of who the riders are?
Next chart.
Yes,
Next chart.
it's in the presentation.
Okay.
But if you look at the numbers, I mean, I can tell you personally what I did before the freebies, take an Uber. So I'm not adding or subtracting from the total traffic count.
Ubers are single passenger vehicles still because you're taking it as a private trip. You're not sharing it with other users.
I think in the 20 trips, I've had somebody ride with me on a freebie once.
Okay. Well,
Just,
it's still bringing cars, you're still attracting, Uber model, you're still attracting cars because you have to bring, the driver has to come to the area and is waiting for someone to pick them up, so you're still bringing traffic, additional single occupancy vehicles into the network. Versus, this is just 4 cars that are circulating, and they're not random drivers coming from outside of St. Pete Beach. And in March, we've had nearly 14,000 passengers. So rider demographics, this is between last year's and this year's data. So majority, 51% of our riders are basically under 50 and different ranges, and then over 45.6 is over 51. Gender is 54% women, 46% men. And local versus non-local riders, we were able to determine that by when you sign up for an account, we ask for your information, so by zip code, that's the best way that we were able to pull that data. So 54% are local with the zip code of 33706, and then 46% are non-local. And then we also were able to pull and isolate through the freebie data. We geofenced all the transit stops, and we're able to pin that down to pickups and drop-offs at transit stops within St. Pete Beach. And 20% of all our rides have been to transit stops, first and last miles connections.
And what period of time is these demographics?
This is from last year's to this year's data, fiscal year 22 and 23 combined. Because this is now, we're looking at how we've mostly covered the city in its entirety. 2020 and 2021 was half the city's demographics.
Just a couple of comments. I mean, it's interesting data. The age data is interesting to know. I don't think it really affects what we do. And I'm listed as a 21-year-old because I don't put my birthday in, my real birthday in anything unless I have to. And I learned from a friend of mine who may be in the audience tonight. The local versus non-local, I would like to see, and this will come to the, I think, the question that the mayor had in the last meeting. 33706, as we know, covers bigger than St. Pete Beach. It's, I don't know exactly where, but there's parts of St. Petersburg and other areas.
Treasure Island and Treasure Island.
And there would be some, to some degree of visitors who are from out of state who have to get a profile, who may put their Airbnb or wherever that they're staying, their vacation rental. So is there a way that they can go by, actually do a look at the actual city? Because I think also in here, we've got people who are calling from the, I believe in the hotels, you can go to the concierge, can you call me a freebie? Because I'm trying to get us down to what really was
This is based off your user profile. So right now, the best measure that we have is when we ask for your zip code information. There's no, right now, verifying of who's an actual resident. I mean, that would create a whole other system to verify.
But that was the question we were trying to get answered.
Yeah, here's what I'm sorry to interrupt, Commissioner Grill. I'm going to kind of piggyback on what you're saying.
Please, no.
And it kind of comes to a bigger issue, and it's one that keeps circulating in my mind when we talk about traffic, because this is a component of traffic and us trying to get cars off the road. And the mayor had initially brought this up because, is it the hotel guests that are getting these rides ahead of residents? So now I have got two groups in my head. I've got residents and I've got hotel guests. And I'm thinking about the concerns that the residents have as we start addressing the comp plan and the hoteliers, and there is a perception that the more people that come to the hotels, the higher the traffic will be. Yet, I see that there is another significant component to traffic, because I think it's multifaceted, and that other significant component is our day trippers. Whether you want to call them Sunrunner riders or you want to say they're day trippers coming across the Bayway and coming across the Corey Causeway with their vehicles weekdays and weekends. And I can tell you the number of cars that come across the Bayway and take a left at the Don Cesar are massive. They're not staying at hotels, and they are not non-locals. They're not non-locals because they park in Paso Grill and I see their plates. They're not non-locals. So I'm thinking to myself, and then maybe we can, is there a way, and there may not be a way, is there a way that we can determine whether the non-locals are visitor guests in St. Pete Beach versus non-residents of St. Pete Beach, but otherwise living in our local communities? And the profile may not allow for that. The profile may be able to be amended so we can start gathering that data. I just don't know enough about it to know. But I think it's important, if we're going to comprehensively understand our traffic and our volume of traffic out here, that we understand it in more than just the people that live in St. Pete Beach and the tourists that are staying in our hotels. Because I just think it's more than that. And I'm wondering, now that we're looking at this, if there's a way to capture that.
Well, right now, the best way we would be able to look at it is just through zip codes. We can pull and ask them to run the zip codes for the local area outside of St. Pete Beach and those of St. Petersburg and Tampa, and see how many users are signed up and actively using the service. Would be the best way of doing that. Now, how many, the only other option, I guess, then to determine if they're tourists, but we also know that people, local people, meaning St. Pete Beach residents or people visiting from St. Petersburg and stuff, they do come to hotels, because the other thing that we could do is look at trips originating and ending at hotels to kind of see what that demographic is, and then their zip codes. So there's that, but it would be a separate analysis, and I have to work with the provider.
This is just another data point driver, separate apart from a traffic study. But the more information we can cull, I think the better comprehensive understanding we have of what our traffic
And
is.
separate from Freebie, we do have another system called Placer AI, which kind of takes a small sample of cell phone data and then has like an algorithm, and then it can extrapolate, and it tells us, and this doesn't have to do with the transit service. This could tell us, for example, in an event, how many visitors came, where they came from, where most people went to after. So that could be a separate analysis that we can do with that tool.
Because, Michelle, I think what we're trying to get to, and so we're not trying to pick apart the charts, I mean, I know a lot of work went into creating these, is when we started out on this path in 2018, started thinking about, and the discussions about the charges with PSTA and the dissatisfaction the city had with PSTA and what they were doing, was what are we replacing it with, and how now, we're 3 years later, how is this being used, right? We had a bucket of money that we used to provide the PSTA, and we all said, no one's using it. We don't know. I mean, there were disparaging comments, but we never really got any ridership data, right? I mean, you struggled, and you're still struggling, I think, to get good ridership data out of PSTA. So we're trying to just understand how is, now that we've got this new model, where is it, and how effective, and which population is benefiting from it. Not saying anything's wrong with it, right with it, wrong with it, then we can understand, okay, where do we go and how do we go forward with this?
Well, I think one question, and we're going through it, but what the priority at the time was, to find a solution to the PSTA issue that we had. But looking into it now, is a priority is traffic. But if we're going to prioritize residents over visitors, then you're going to create a demand of visitors still relying on outside transportation services. So right now we have it as a first come, first served basis, and it's based when you input your request. We're not giving a preference, but I guess we can deliver the service in any way that the commission pleases. We would just need to know what really is the highest priority for you as and for your constituents.
I mean, it doesn't change the priority, because right now, if you give residents priority and there's no residents requesting, then the visitors get to use it anyway. If a visitor is using the service and a resident wants to request it but they can't get it, they're going to have to hop in their car anyway. So it's not a matter of, it has nothing to do with traffic, because it's either you're going to make the resident drive or you're going to make the visitor drive. And so it doesn't really change the dynamic of how many cars you have. It's just a matter of, if you have tax-paying residents who are contributing to this and they're paying it to their property taxes, maybe they should get priority over somebody else who is not contributing to paying for the service itself. And then if no residents are requesting it, then by all means, it's a free-for-all.
And that's fine.
Or we just meet the requirements at peak demand.
Yeah.
We meet the needs at peak demand. If there's a way, is there a way to, we probably easily, they can identify peak demand, the hours of operation that are peak demand, and see if we can meet those needs. And maybe there's a way to subsidize the use of this by advertising on these vehicles that will subsidize the city and the costs associated with adding.
But before we go there, we're trying to solve a problem, we don't have the right data. That's what I said, we need more data. These are all great discussions, but we don't have enough data here, at least from this chart, or in the rest of the presentation that I saw, to help us come to this conclusion, because we took a service that was costing us a lot of money, costing the city, and we didn't feel it was a good service that met the needs of the residents. We have now put in I call it basically a private Uber or Beach Ride, but a private door-to-door service for everybody. The good news is we're breaking all sorts of records. Everybody loves it and now gets frustrated because we're a product of our success. So the question is, what do we do going forward? And I think we need to get better data to understand all these questions. For example, on the bottom of the chart in the middle, 20% of all rides for the last mile, and you geofenced it. That means, so in March at 14,000 was at 2,800 rides were most likely for workers, right? People were coming into the city to work in the city. And they're using the public transportation, particularly Sunrunner, because Sunrunner is free, and anybody who has to commute.
Well, they use different services, and we do have to accommodate, we did cut back a significant amount of public transit, and south of County Park, we have no transit routes, so we do need to provide service to workers.
Just don't take it wrong, I'm not criticizing. I'm just trying to, we need to understand specifically where is the demand going, which segment. So we've got hotel workers, I think, or I want to say hotel workers. We have the workforce that comes in, that commutes in, and it's 20%. It's 20% over time. Some of that probably is some residents, because there are residents who don't live, there are residents who do like Sunrunner and take Sunrunner, but they don't live anywhere close to Sunrunner. So they've got to get some sort of transportation, so I'm sure there's some residents in there. But in the local versus non-local, I think we need a better split and definition besides 33706, because, and I don't know if they can get us the data.
I have a suggestion. Can we let her finish the presentation, and then we can ask questions? And I do have some questions. Okay. At one point in time, we followed Robert's rules where only one commissioner could speak before allowing other commissioners to speak. And
please.
Thank you.
Okay. So service delivery, freebies available to anyone who requests the service. Rides can be requested via the app by calling a dispatcher or flagging down a driver. So this is just going over ride requests, and then there is a ability for users to rate our drivers, and they have a 4.96 rating. Freebie does prioritize hiring local, so most of the drivers are residents of St. Pete Beach, and it's part of the success of the service. Wait times vary depending time of day and week, and I'll go into a couple charts through there. They definitely see a rush in the evening hours around dinner time, and then there's a little bit around midday, like lunch around 11. Our goal is to keep wait times below 15 minutes, and this is looking at, remember, this is a public transportation service. When a 15-minute wait time is considered premium transit, the Sunrunner is considered a premium transit service. That's headways of 15 minutes. Standard public transit service is headways of 30 minutes. The Central Avenue Trolley and the Suncoast have wait times of 30 minutes. So we are here as a public transit service trying to achieve a premium transit service level of service. And then out of the 26,000 rides completed this year so far since the expansion, we've had 12 rides that have waited over 1 hour. So here you can see a chart with the wait time analysis. 55% are under 10 minutes, 20% are within 10 to 15 minutes, and then you have 12% at 15 to 20 minutes, and 10% 20 to 30, and 3% over 30 minutes. So we do have 75% we're meeting that level of service, which is premium transit, but then we do have 87% is still under 20 minutes. And you can see our peak year over year, just looking at the data, even though we've had different points of the service and where we've been providing it. March typically is our busiest, and then followed by April. And then we do have, last year in July was pretty significant in the service, but pretty much from March through July is our busiest time of the year. It tends to taper off, once school starts. Current wait times. So this was a table provided of this year's service. We have our average peak, which was currently through our spring break from February, March. When we were putting together, we just got April's data. And then this has been the average total wait times. We did just look at this year's service since now we're citywide. Prior years, we've had different levels of service in terms of where we're delivering it. We weren't citywide yet, so we wanted to focus on what we're at today. Most of the wait times that you can see on the bottom is the day of the week, 1 through 7, and then you have 0 to 23, which are the hours. And during February to March, you can see it's more scattered, more weekday and peaks in the evening. Like I said, around 11, we did have a peak throughout the weekdays. But between October 22, there's a typo there, to March 23, our peaks are really in the evenings and on weekends. Then we'll keep on. So this is ride requests versus completed. We do get this as part of our monthly reports, but we don't have right now a chart that shows it cumulative, so we just took some samples. And these are since March of this year was our highest ridership we wanted to show. One of the things I'll say that requests versus completed will be slightly higher because people do initiate and cancel requests and then reinitiate because they want to see if there's wait times. But you can see from this chart during the weekday on a Monday, for example, the ride requests completed versus the requests made are closer together, that gap, so we've completed more closer, but then on a Saturday, especially on the evening hours, that gap gets wider. That means we're getting more requests than rides completed. And so that's where that peak demand is really what we were seeing is on the weekends, evenings. So electric consumption charging, and when we did this, we had just talked to Freebie and we ran the analysis for 4 cars, but understanding now that they have the 2 as a spare, it's about $4,000 per year in what their electrical consumption currently today. Since we passed our policy on EV charging, they are paying when they charge a vehicle at the library or the rec center or on 9th Avenue, but they really use the library and the rec, and we're working with them to determine a more centralized location, because when we started the service, they're starting in Paso Grosso, so their hub was there, but now that we're citywide, we're trying to find something that's more centralized and reestablish something that's going to be better to improve the service delivery, because right now they have to swap the cars all the way down, so that also is impacting their ability to quickly, efficiently get there, so we want to be more centralized. And then the cost of the service, they operate 40 hours of service per day, and across the 4 vehicles. Sorry, excuse me, I have my notes. So this is a history of how we were operating the service since we started it. We had 1 vehicle in 2020, and then, as I said, in June 2020, we added additional, and then 21 we upped it, so now we're up to 4 vehicles at 48 hours per day. So on the cost per rider now, currently from Q2 is $4.19. And then we did a review of different contracts that Freebie operates in. Advertising revenue. One of the things that we're not utilizing right now is that there is an opportunity to have a 50-50 advertising revenue split. Since we started the service, the city had elected to forego the advertising revenue, but we could possibly generate up to $60,000 a year in advertising revenue to subsidize the service that we have not been utilizing. And then the contract comparison, we looked, the city of Dunedin right now is looking to do a 6-month pilot project this year. Their hourly rate is $39.64, and there's no advertising guarantee, so that's their currently going rate. The city of Delray Beach negotiated last year in '22, and they have a $30,000 advertising guarantee built into each vehicle that they operate, which is 5 vehicles, and Freebie keeps 100% of that revenue in exchange for a lower operating cost of $31. Between the advertising revenue and the $31 at Delray Beach, it would come out to similar to what Dunedin's paying, which is $39.72 per hour. We negotiated our contract in 2019, and our rate is now $30.60. It's been that way since the inception of the service, and it falls in line with similar contracts that were negotiated during that time period, but due to inflation and the cost of living and stuff, they've had to increase some of their service costs. So if we were to renegotiate, we're looking closer to a $39 an hour. And so any questions, I can go back to.
I have a couple comments. First of all, I want to compliment Michelle and the staff for doing this. I mean, this was, a phenomenal thing since, as compared to PSTA. I think maybe some people realize, maybe not everybody does, that St. Pete Beach and Treasure Island are unique with PSTA, that we never got locked into having it put on our ad valorem tax. So if you lived in any city other than St. Pete Beach or Treasure Island, you look at your tax bill, there's a line item, and you are paying for PSTA whether you use it or not, and you can't get out of it. So we have a special contract with them, which we negotiated. We used to have our own bus service, then we had a bus service through Bats Taxi, and then we decided to do a special thing with PSTA, which we've been doing. I forget what year we started that. Us and Treasure Island do that. But as everybody knows, we're not satisfied with the service. If you get on those buses, it didn't seem like anybody was ever riding them. Perhaps there were some workers coming in, trying to come in from St. Pete or wherever to work in St. Pete Beach. And that still happens through that bus 90?
About 90.
Route 90. So anyway, out of frustration, the commission in 2019 decided to do this. I thought it sounded good. I thought it sounded so good that you probably remember me saying it's like having a free Uber or Lyft. So I think the biggest problem we're going to have is we won't be able to keep up with it. It's sort of common sense to me. So that's kind of where we're at right now, and we're just trying to find a way of maybe making it better. Are we currently paying PSTA? Are we in one last installment now?
Well, we are still paying for them, and we've been working through the contract negotiations and we're meeting with them next week. So going to the history of PSTA, when we started this, we were paying them $570,000 a year for the Central Avenue trolley service, the Suncoast, and the Route 90, and the paratransit services that they provide. Had we never changed anything, and it would still, the buses were still going down to Paso Grill, when we did analysis last year, because their hourly rate continues to go up, our current contract is $56 per hour. If we had never changed anything, we would be paying PSTA $916,000 a year for the same service that we had in 2018 with no change. And I think the feedback at that time was the residents didn't like it, they didn't use it, and their taxpayer dollars were going to fund that. So I think it's a contrast to now we're having a different discussion with Freebie, that who do we prioritize? So it's a better sense in how we're paying for service, because we're actually now having a service that more residents use than the transit service previously. This year, with their contract, they're looking to increase the hourly rate by 3.5%, so we're looking at close to $58 an hour. But what we're trying to work out is, since they came out with the Sunrunner, we want to look at possibly cutting another additional cut to the Central Avenue Trolley Service at 75th Avenue, and that's what we're going to be meeting with them next week. If we were to do that, that would save us another almost just about $100,000 in PSTA money.
Okay.
So we're going from, when we started, $570,000, now we're going to be paying them close this year, $289,000, even with that increase because of how we've been cutting back that service.
So what I'm trying to understand is that if we're trying to increase the freebie, can we get to a point where we're not paying PSTA anything?
We might be able to.
And use those funds for freebie? I guess that's where I'm going with that. How can we?
If we could get the one PSTA bus to 75th to drop off workers,
right,
employees, and then they can be picked up by the freebies, would they ever have to come past 75th?
That's what I'm thinking. And do we even pay for that?
We would have, so that's where we're going to talk to them next week. We do also operate the Suncoast trolley that goes up north, and what we've been noticing in the trends of the ridership in terms of the Central Avenue trolley is that not a lot of people, even prior to the Sunrunner, a lot of people just take it to 75th and then they transfer over to the Suncoast trolley and then go north into Treasure Island, because Treasure Island does not have a direct PSTA route into the island besides the Suncoast. So their workers have to come into St. Pete Beach and then go into to Treasure Island. So what we're seeing is that 75th is everyone's just transferring to another bus service and then going north. And there are not a lot of people going south. And then since we started, since they started the Sunrunner, you know, most people have pretty much shifted over there. There's still some, well, because we have someone riding the bus and they talk to some of the riders like, why are you still using the service, and why are you using the Sunrunner, which follows a very similar route, and it's just been habit, and then for convenience because the Sunrunner doesn't have a stop. So there's still some workers, but nothing that Freebie couldn't facilitate, given that we would focus, we try to get people to connect them and also focus on those rides so that we don't leave people stranded. You know, they're actually, you know, they don't have a car, they don't have an option, they're trying to make a living, so we want to focus also maintaining that if we're going to be cutting back transit service.
And we still have Bus 90, which comes from the south side of St. Petersburg, brings for workers, and then turns around. I think it comes once in the morning and twice in the afternoon, or?
Twice in the morning and twice in the afternoon, but that does not cover the shift workers that work late at night in the evenings, or very early. It comes at 9 and 10, and then at 4 and 5.
And with different routing.
Yeah, and I know, like, for specifically when we were cutting back the service in Paso Grill, like, there was peak workers. I know we were talking to, you know, owners of the Hurricane, and their workers, they have a couple workers that rely on that transit, and they were concerned about how this impact was going to impact them, and they didn't want to lose employees. So we have to be sensitive to those people that are transit dependent, you know, and are part of the workforce of our community.
Did they start relying on the freebie?
They've shifted because they've already made that transition, but we do have to be sensitive to how we're prioritizing trips and users because of those shift workers.
So I'm just trying to get some clarity on. So I guess there's no simple answer. I was just hoping there was a certain amount of money that we're going to shift further away from PSTA and have to fund towards freebie, but I sure working on that.
We're working on that. One thing we could look also and talk to them about is the Suncoast, because now that we cover citywide, we could. They're still going to have to bring someone in, so there might just have to be that one stop at 75th. But we could probably bring people all the way to the last stop at the Suncoast, you know, right at the northern tip of the island. And then they can transfer to the Suncoast trolley from there. So we would have to discuss that with PSTA in terms of logistics and their turnaround and such.
Okay.
Would we ever be comfortable with a situation where we've actually added more freebies with some specific directive that the freebie be designated for service personnel out here to get them from A to B? I mean, to me, eliminating those buses has such a great value.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's a possibility. Maybe it's just not fiscally feasible, I don't know.
One of the things, and go back to my point about understanding, before we design or change the design, I think we're premature on a prioritization, is what is really the usage by different type of population today, workers, residents, visitors, out-of-state visitors, so that we can see how it's being used, because there are some of the commercial businesses that were subsidizing when the workers had to pay, they get an allowance or a bus pass or whatever it might be, they can claim from that commercial residence. So are we replacing then what was already being paid by the commercial business? So that's why I say we need to understand this better. This is all good discussion, and there's lots of different views of it, and I'm not sure it's a prioritization. And I find that that's why I'm asking for the better population breakdown. The comment, though, that it's and it's an interesting comment for discussion, that it's viewed as a public transportation service, but I think if you ask people just in general, is freebie public transport? What is it? It's Mr. Frizlowski's words, it's a private Uber service. It's an Uber service that we have, which is great. I mean, I think we all like it, use it, and it's good. But is it a public service? Is it a private service? Because a public service, yes, everything we do, I mean, just thinking out loud, everything we do is a public service. But
It is purely paid for 100% by the city. It is a public service.
It's public service. And I think
It's not, we do not discriminate as to who can use it. So it is a 100% public service. I can't define it as anything other than that.
Correct.
Which I think is positive. I know people that, like parents that have their kids ride it, feel good that it's a city-provided service.
What other data points do you think you would need to determine whether or not the usage is sufficient to consider adding more usage, adding more Uber, I said Uber, adding more, or increasing service of this?
Well, it comes down to me, the design and the wait time analysis chart, I think, is key. Because so there's frustration, as we've all heard from residents and/or experienced personally, hey, where's my Uber, I'm waiting too long, I'm waiting too long. I think we need to define the service better. How long should you have to wait, on average? And look, if anyone's ever taken a public bus, sometimes they're late, right? Sometimes they're early, sometimes they're late. So the chart that we have here on slide 96 of 108 in the packet on the wait time analysis, I like my numbers and statistics. We turn it around. In 28% of the rides were more than the 15-minute wait time that we said is appropriate. And then it went to 25% so far in fiscal year '23. I mean, it is what it is. I don't know, have we defined, is 15 minutes what we want? Do we want to implement a premium service, as you say, at the 15 minutes? Or maybe is 20 minutes reasonable? Look.
Yeah, but I think that's dynamic, because the shorter the wait time, the more people you're going to get to use it. Right?
No, I got it.
So it's...
And it costs us more because we need more capacity.
Yeah.
But those are the things we have to analyze in what we want to live with and what type of service it is, because Michelle and her team can implement whatever we ask her to implement.
Well,
it comes at a cost. And
I would like to just add, so we like to, 15 minutes is premium, but it's not, for example, Sarasota County, one of the things they recently just did is they have reevaluated all their routes, and they've replaced their poorer performing routes with demand responsive transit, which is exactly what a freebie service is. They established a wait time of 30 minutes. So that just gives you a point of a neighboring, community. They're providing similar service. They replaced, and they're a large transit nation, mass transit, which is a very bold. They just saw all of their poor performing routes, and they've replaced it with demand, and they asked people to wait 30 minutes. So that threshold never really was set. We try to target 15 minutes, but we're still pretty much, on par with, what a transit agency would expect in terms of that. And then there's different levels of transit, and whether you want to provide something standard or 30 minutes or premium, and what that target is.
Right. Right. No, absolutely, and I think, I know you can implement whatever, but it all comes at a cost.
Well, I
We
think-
we could put 8 cars on the road 14 hours a day.
Well, I think
And-
that's why it's important to clarify what exactly the outstanding data requests are that would help inform the level of service decision, because, ultimately that's kind of what we're going to be going through over the course of the next couple of months, is making those prioritized decisions. And so, Michelle mentioned a couple of different tools that are available to help get some better data. She mentioned the Placer software as one example. That's good. That's a step in the right direction. We've got data based on the wait time analysis, et cetera, but it's not at the end of the day, there's only going to be so much data available to us. There will be a limit as to exactly how finite we can get with some of it. So I think it would be helpful to us to better understand if there's specific information that's required.
So personally, I would like to see the population data with better granularity on local versus non-local. I think that's important to know. I did want to, I'm sorry, I had more comments here before, Vince, and I'll promise I will be quiet. On the advertising, the contract does not guarantee advertising, and what's in the charts that you didn't show, the statement that the city changed their policy, there was disagreement from the previous commissioners about just this, and who's going to start advertising. I mean, these are nice, Capital One, sure, everybody knows Capital One, but everybody's got to, what do we want the city to look like? Is this going to be advertising billboards? I mean, we do get complaints when we haven't had them for a while, but when the guy with the company with the boat with the big LED billboard going through the neighborhoods, people weren't very happy with that. Same thing I saw yesterday, 3 days ago, driving up and down Gulf Boulevard, pulling somebody using a Tesla to pull a trailer with an LED advertising billboard up and down Gulf Boulevard. So there was a lot of disagreement. Yes, it's interesting. Yes, we can fund it, and there's money, but we never change the policy. The contract never committed to Freebie that they would get advertising revenue. It would be subject to the commission, and the commission said, we don't want to do this.
Well, I didn't say that there
No,
was a change.
the memo did. You didn't say it. The memo did. Same thing on the EV charging. I've been bringing this up now for, I don't know, maybe it's a year. That we didn't change the policy. Somebody implemented free charging. And until I started looking at this, I've been mentioning this about Freebie. The contract states that Freebie, that the cost they're charging us is everything required to deliver the RFP, what they committed to us. City attorney agreed with my view, which was the contract does not say that we should be paying for electricity. We can minimize it, and that's okay, just like we did when we had the previous discussion to say, oh, it's a small number, and then people decided to chide me on the fact that it's a small number. How big is a number? What number does it need to be before we say we're not going to pay? 5,000? 10,000? 15,000? I mean, these are fundamental discussions that we need to have, and I know the suggestion was don't open the contract because, as you say, it's going to go to $39, and if we open the contract, we potentially are looking at more money. That may be, but it's also got to be a contract that supports the city and is the right thing to do for the city. Less money is always better than more, don't get me wrong. I'm the first one to say that.
I think we need to also be, all of us be thinking about what's our level of commitment to this product? If our level of commitment, and I'm looking at the graphs, is, to me, I'm saying, seems like something we should be all in on as opposed to the options. Because the options are 50, 60-seater buses rocking and rolling down Gulf Boulevard at 45 miles an hour, clipping bikers.
Stopping.
That's it. I don't know what the other option is, and this seems to be knocking it out of the ballpark. Can it be tweaked? Can we get data from it that will help us improve the resident experience, the visitor's experience. We can do all that, but there's no sense in doing any of it unless we're talking about having some long-term level of commitment to it. And I'm not saying everybody has to agree that we have a long-term level of commitment, but I think that's a fundamental foundation for moving forward and saying, number one, we'll all agree we're all in. Now, once we all agree we're all in, now let's say how can we make it the best product for both the city fiscally and service-wise. So, and I'm not saying anybody agrees that we're all in, but I think we should probably be thinking about that from the standpoint of if we're going to be renewing a contract or opening a contract, what's our level of commitment going forward? Because the option is, Plan B is B for bus. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, when we went in, we said we could deliver a product that was better, gave better service for less money.
And I think you've been successful, you know. Can we be better? We can be better, and we just got to figure out ways to do it. I think the data helps. I was actually asking about this data because I thought we would be able to, it would be an alternative source of traffic data for us as well to help us in other projects. But I think, you know, whatever we need, we probably need to get it pretty soon, whatever you need, you know, and come and make some decisions about what our global decision is going forward on this as a product. Because I'm looking at the ridership's just, you know, great.
Yeah, ridership is not an issue.
Not our problem.
Yeah.
It's
So I think
maintaining
we're-
the service.
And it's going to get better if we deal with this wait time somehow.
So the issue, the original question was, is there a way, and to my mind, it seems a very simple software solution, is there a way to have 2 tiers of access, one that gives priority to residents over anybody else?
So we can talk to them about it, and I think that's something, if we're going to look to renegotiate, we'll work with them
That should
in the
be,
year.
and again, forgive me, but in my simple mind, it is a simple software solution that should be either yes or no
Well,
question.
I mean, who's going to, it is a simple software solution, but it also comes with how are we going to verify, what documents are we going to require for verification of residency?
That's fine. The question right now is simply yes or no. Can it or can it not be done? I think that was a question that was asked 4 weeks ago.
It can, it's just, there's a lot of moving parts to how we're going to implement that.
So if you go to Boulevard Burgers and you're there and you're a resident and they say, well, I got a call from over at Willie's, but it's non-resident, so I'm going to go pick you up at Boulevard Burgers, and there's 5 other people that are going to get on because they want to get a ride back to PCI, and they're all non-residents, can they get on?
Sure. The question isn't, so the question is really at its most basic. If 2 calls come in, and the driver doesn't have to make a decision, this is simply the software puts it in the queue and says, okay, 2 requests come in, this one has priority, this one doesn't. The same way that, you know, when you get called on to get boarding on a plane, Group 1 goes first, you know? And no, it doesn't really matter. If you come in 10 minutes after boarding starts, Group 1 still goes first. And the other thing is, to your point earlier, you know, it is whether it's a public service or public utility or however you want to look at it, you know, the argument can be made, well, it's not fair because the bus doesn't give priority, but look at it, a different public service, our beach parking. We give our residents free beach parking. And if you're there, you get it, and if you're not a resident, you pay extra for that same privilege, for the same usage of that service. And so that's really the fundamental question is, can it be done, yes or no? And if it can be done, then the second question is there a downside to giving our residents priority, giving the people who are actually paying for it, whether it's a line item on our tax bill like PSTA is for everybody else in the county, we are still the ones paying for it. Shouldn't we get priority access to the service that we're paying for through our tax dollars? So the question is there a downside to it?
But this is why I want to see the data, if I
So
may.
on the data, there's
Our resident today, are residents waiting an inordinate amount of time because the non-resident population is getting rides with data, not anecdotally. I've waited too long. I've talked to Michelle about, hey, I waited too long. I'm one guy, one ride, one guy.
So I think the data is there. I think there could be more and better data,
Yeah,
for
we need-
sure.
we need some granularity.
But the data is there. So you look at the ride requests, which is really more telling than the average wait time, because the average wait time doesn't tell you when somebody quit waiting. All it says is, this is how long they waited before they got one. I can tell you many times I've waited 15, 20 minutes and then stopped waiting and got an Uber or walked home or however else it happened. And so I'm not going to be in that average wait time, but rather I'm going to be in that, and you have multiple scenarios here where it's 25, 30% of the people are quitting. No matter how close these numbers are together, the difference between, 60 and 90, that's 30%. And so you've got, in many instances, where 30% of people quit waiting. So again, the issue is it a good service? Do we like it? Yes, it's great. I mean, the usage is exceptional. Does it take cars off the road? Probably does. It's a matter of how can we improve the experience for our residents, and is there a way to improve the experience for our residents? But I think, so that's one is very telling, because you have the numbers that people request versus people that complete. And when you have as many as 25, 30% of people quit waiting, that's pretty telling, right? So they're not even factored into, so when you look at what's the average wait time, well, we don't really know what the average wait time is. This is the average wait time for the people that didn't quit waiting.
Why don't we just increase the service?
No, so maybe that's...
And that
just
quit
increase the
waiting is-
service.
And that quit waiting is only at
And that's what I'm saying, is if we're
also-
going to commit to this product, we're probably going to end up increasing the service anyway.
No, absolutely, but it still doesn't answer the question,
And-
can we provide priority service to our residents?
But, yeah, and I'd just say, look, I work for a software company. Changing software, we've all maybe implemented systems. They're usually over budget, because if they don't have the software today, they're going to have to create it. And and we know who's going to pay for it. And it's expensive. I mean, we can cost it out and see, is this something we're going to invest in? Is there a way to tweak it to make it better? Just my experience, anytime you have unique software, it's expensive, and by the way, then you're basically funding, not saying Freebie would do it, but I've seen other companies where they get funded and then they use it for their other clients, and you fund for someone else. So that's why, and I don't know if we can get there. Are residents being, change the question, are residents, being, not receiving the service they expect because other segments of the population are receiving that instead?
And one more data point, Vince, is what Commissioner Girl was asking for earlier, which is, I think, one of the very first slides, is we've got 2 for 14 hours, 2 for 10 hours, we've got 2 backup ones. And I've asked this question of multiple drivers, is how many trips can you make and how long can you actually stay on the road? And the answer is anywhere from 30 to 60% of the actual time. So if they're allocated for 14 hours, maybe they're on the road for 7 to 8 hours, and then they wait the other 4 to 6 hours to charge while we do have the other 2 vehicles. So then that would be an interesting data point, is to see between the 6 vehicles, how many hours do those 6 vehicles actually spend in transit? Because we've seen the emails, we've heard the anecdotal comments about drivers sleeping for 4 hours at a time in the parking lot, and none of us really want to pay for a service that we're not using. And if we're budgeted for, was it 48 hours a day, and we're only getting 36 hours of charge and drive time, that'll be interesting and important data. And that'll help determine whether we need more of them, because if we're paying for 6 and we're really getting 3.5, 4 a day, anyway.
We know we have the hourly data. I mean, we know how many hours we're billed for, so it's not a fixed $536,000 a year. So we at least have that much. We'll push for more. I mean, we'll push for timesheets. We will see what we can get in terms of route mapping, and we'll push for more.
Okay.
Thank you for the presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
It's a good discussion, more to come, but very good discussion.
All right, next we have item 8B. Do we have anyone for public comments?
Did not receive any cards.
Oh, I didn't know where it was going to go, but
Wait, please. No, you're fine.
Another slide. John Kurzman, St. Pete Beach, Ninth Avenue. I sent a memo, and the gist of it was that I took a freebie about last Christmas to see the boat parade in Paso Grill. It said it would take 15 minutes, took half an hour to get to me, took an hour to get to Paso Grill because we had to stop at 2 hotels, and I missed the parade. It was that late. It was inaccurate the whole time. I think that, and it was just, I learned at the time that they really have to spend a lot of time charging them. It's very hard to operate them that way. The reason we did it was because the city had instituted no electric bikes on the sidewalk. So instead of riding my bike and taking a 15-minute bike ride, we had to do that. And in December, there's nobody on the sidewalk. We could have ridden on the sidewalk, and then we get on Gulf Boulevard when we see someone on the sidewalk and then get off. So I would like to, hopefully someday we could revisit that. But let me just go into the presentation a little bit. There we go. So, measure what you're measuring. If the contract calls for 2 cars for 14 hours and 2 cars for 10 days, they did all these elaborate graphs. How about a graph that shows how many days you had 2 cars for 14 days and 2 cars for 10 days, for 10 hours a day? And really, it's not how many vehicles, it's how many drivers that are on the road for 14 hours a day and how many drivers are on the road picking up passengers for 10 hours a day, if that's what the contract says. And then when you look at this chart, is it really, for instance, in FY23, 4 vehicles for 48 hours, or do we have 6 vehicles for 48 hours, or is it there's 2 vehicles that are on the road? And in 21, was it 2 extra vehicles then, or 2 vehicles now? I don't know when there was actually 2 extra vehicles. Now we have wait times. Can you imagine if FedEx only told you what the wait times were for when they picked up your package? But that's what we're dealing here with. We're the package. We don't care about the wait times. Everything here is about wait times. I care about delivery times. When did I get to where I was going? Wait times. I don't care about wait times. Wait times is just when you give up. It's pickup time. It's delivery time that I care about. None of this is about delivery time. So the one idea I did have was, if we do have 6 vehicles right now, how about we at least make sure that everybody's charged up, all 6 vehicles are charged up before peak time, and then maybe have 2 extra drivers for that peak time, so that we don't have so many abandoned calls, and we can use all 6 vehicles then and make effective use of the people. Also, we don't have to go to PSTA. There are services like Free Beach Ride. There are a lot of competitors out there that are running a lot of little shuttles. So maybe there are other solutions out there. And also, let's not prioritize riders, but maybe we can gain revenue by having maybe some of the hotels or the tourist tax fund more vehicles and grow the service rather than having to make people stand and wait. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
All right, next item, 8B, Business Spotlight Video.
Yeah, we had a request to put this on the agenda to follow up on comments from the last city commission meeting, so I'll just leave it at that and chime in as staff as needed.
Well, I was the one who requested to put this on the agenda for further discussion, because after the meeting, I thought about it some more, and this is a citywide initiative that we really didn't discuss and/or vote on. We just announced it, and I think it'd be more appropriate to have that discussion. And I don't believe that the city is in the advertising business for any commercial property. There are private individuals, there's the various chambers of commerce. If we want to have advertising, then I feel that they should run that. Same thing, and as Commissioner Marone brought up about advertising with Freebie, we made a conscious decision not to advertise with Freebie, not to get into the commercial advertising business. And yes, it's certainly on Freebie, there is some money that to be made with that, but we made a decision that that's not the right look and feel for the city that we wanted. So we, as a commission, said we're not going to do that. I think we have a good relationship with our business community as it is. Could relationships always be better? Absolutely, but I don't think that using this for bridge building is really what our mission is and where we should be spending our time and energy. And there's also a cost. Our PIO is a contract employee per hourly. There is a cost to do this. We have to pay for the camera person, et cetera. So if we are going to do it, I'd like to understand what is the cost before we decide that we're going to do this. So I don't think, in conclusion, this is something that the city should be in the middle of and running an advertising business for commercial businesses. Thank you.
Sarah, would you mind commenting on the discussion we had after the last commission meeting about potential restrictions to this? Because that might actually be a moot point. I'm sorry to put you in the spot.
No, yes. Hi, everyone. Sarah Lyra Quinte. I'm the Public Information Officer here. Can you specify your question a little
Sure.
bit?
So the original conversation that we had about, what can we do to improve communication in the city, and, what else can we do? So this was one of the ideas that that I proposed and we kind of talked about, which we then you had a conversation with the city manager, said, is this something that we can do? The answer came back, says, yep, that's perfectly fine. And then after the city commission meeting last week, we had a conversation saying that there may actually be some restrictions that maybe don't allow the city to even do this program.
Yes, that's correct. So we did have a discussion around the ordinance that's in place currently that was put in back in 2000s at some point. 2003. And that was specifically in regards to talking about private businesses on our cable network. And so with that being said, at that time, that was the only vehicle that we were using to communicate. So we wanted to take a closer look at that to make sure that we were complying with the ordinance that was in place and to discuss what might need to be added in order to remain in compliance if this was something that we were going to move forward with.
So I could give you a little bit of history on that since I was the mayor back at that time. I don't see a problem with the city trying to help out businesses. I think what the mayor is trying to do is good. I think we always talk about residents come first, businesses come first. To me, we're all one city and we're all trying to help each other out. The issue I think that came up back in that year, maybe led to that ordinance, was, I think it came from our city attorney at the time, was be careful because you just can't say no to any business. So I can think of a couple businesses that would probably shock people if we started advertising them. And so that was the real question, is once you open it up for one, how do you stop? When I say, hey, I'd like to be next on the list, how do you say no to them? And you can't say no to them. So I think that was kind of more of a kind of innocent reason why the city commission at that time decided to, hey, it sounded like a good idea, but maybe it could, so that was kind of in the back of my mind. I actually was going to talk to the city attorney and city manager before we kind of got, down the road too far, but So anyway, that's my thoughts. I thought the mayor's idea is a good idea. We're all trying to help each other out here, and, whether you're a resident or business, we're trying to promote local businesses. There are a lot of cities get involved in the chamber. City of Pinellas Park actually built a building for their Chamber of Commerce. So I thought it was one of the ones that kind of went really far with it. Anyway.
Thank you. And I think the thought process behind it was also, we were not going to be cherry picking which businesses, but rather it would be we didn't have a specific system, but it wouldn't be necessarily picking winners and losers and saying you get to go, you didn't get to go. At the same time, that is a valid point. Maybe somebody puts their name in the hat and
You would have to give everybody an equal opportunity.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and just one last comment on the freebie discussion. Commissioner Swirzowski, you remember, I think it maybe wasn't said in the same words that you did, but there was concern on a billboard. Everyone's got a business that they don't like in town that, for whatever reason, they may not like or appreciate or don't want to see. They wouldn't want to see advertised.
Yeah.
And and then what? You can't say no. To the point. So it's quote Commissioner Rowan, you're all in or you're not.
All right, item 8C, Egan
I
Park.
guess just to clarify, so from staff standpoint, we can put an action plan together. We can talk to the city attorney, and we can come back to the next meeting and summarize how we might go about that course of action. If that's the consensus, we can just
My recommendation would be, if everybody's agreeable to doing it, that the businesses themselves submit a request to be considered, and we take them in the order that they come in, so that there's no favoritism, if we're going to do it.
I thought, well, again, do we want to open that? Do we want to open that can of worms? Because
I don't know.
you have to be, you have to.
You're going to have to be impartial.
I think
this is also
it's very challenging. I think it'd be very, very challenging.
It would be. However, I don't think there's anything wrong with potentially looking at a 20-year-old ordinance with the immersion of social media and, everything that's happened since 2003. It may not be a bad idea to maybe update it, but you all are saying exactly what I'm thinking, which is you can't close the door once it's opened.
Right.
Because then if you say no to someone, then all of a sudden you're tied up in some kind of litigation unintentionally that just defeats the purpose of what you're trying to do.
Right.
I can create a scenario in my head where we would all say we might not want to spotlight this or that business,
Right.
and we just don't want to be in that position.
That's what I'm afraid of.
And yeah.
Maybe just leave it alone.
We're always willing to look into things. You just might not like the answer.
I think we should leave it alone.
It's like going to the doctor. Sometimes you just
Yeah.
gotta know.
Okay, fair enough. We can go with status quo for now and respond to any future requests of this nature and address it at that time. So.
Any other discussion on 8B?
Yeah, and
All right, we have 8C, Egan Park Fishing Pier Barge Discussion.
I requested this one on the agenda also, and I wanted to bring it to the commission. As we started a discussion about drones versus fireworks, I remembered back into our discussion on the barges. We had some discussion, and I asked city staff for a copy of the contract. We looked at the contract, and there's some things in the contract that I think we all ought to know, and I have some concerns on it. So we signed the contract in October of '21, and it had a one-year term. Contract expired, and we do not have a renewal or an extension. Contract said that the goods would be delivered by October within 1 year. The goods have not been delivered. The contract said, and it's a good contract, by the way, contract said that the city has the right to claim liquidated damages at $500 per day for every day after the expiration of the contract. So roughly, we're looking at 82, as of 2 weeks ago, I think it was about 80-some-odd thousand dollars. It's a little bit more now. Also found out that we made a down payment of 50% of the value of the contract, and that clause is not in the contract. So we're at a bit of a quandary here. What do we do? Do we claim liquidated damages? I mean, first, I think there's a tactical and a strategic. Tactically, what do we do? We're having the discussion on drones versus fireworks, and there's a number of different things that we need to understand before we come to that conclusion. But what do we do with this contract? Are we exposed? Do we claim liquidated damages? Do we... Anyway, that's where we are. I want everyone to understand that. I think strategically, and I've had a discussion with the city manager's office, we really need to get policies. I don't know if we need more investment, practices, headcount, software to manage our procurement process. I mean, this should have been on the radar screen on November of, last November, November 1st, right, if the contract expired. Hey, we have, actually, before November 1st, we should have had some, highlight to me to say, alerts that, hey, we've got a problem. This contract's expiring, and whether we've got multiple data points across the way on how we're managing contracts. I mean, contracts do, we had one in the last meeting on the building department. Yes, we needed to spend the money, and no debate, we approved it, but the contract expired. We blew through the approved amount. So, and the city manager's not here, but the city manager's office, and same as I mentioned before, we've got to have the right policies, practices, and I don't know where the shortfall is, and it's not for us as a commission to manage operationally. I just know this is the condition of this contract. So what do we do?
Yeah, I'd like to jump in and address a couple points before any discussion, if you don't mind. So, in my view, you've got two separate issues as you've laid them out. And I'll address what I think is the point that we absolutely agree on, which is the effort to improve some of our processes internally. So I'll start with the payment. So correct, there was a 50% down payment that was made on the project that was not included in the contract terms. From the vendor standpoint, there was a written request submitted to the city stating that to complete the job, they would require the 50% deposit. I'm sure many other businesses over the course of that time period have made similar claims based on supply constraints, logistics, etc. However, the process should have been ironed out that when that written notification was provided to the city, that it would have been provided to the procurement manager. That procurement manager position is fairly new. It was created, I'll say 3 years ago. We updated the code pertaining to procurement less than 3 years ago. So that's a resource that historically the city did not have, and that requires some cultural improvements to catch up with the resource. So it's true that that payment was outside the scope of the contract terms. It's also true that the procurement manager position has unfortunately turned over a couple of times during that time period. And the processes haven't, I'll say, organizational, culturally, been refined enough to where that expectation is out there that when that type of claim does come in, the first step is to bring it to the procurement office. That's where we're going. What I want you all to know is that just yesterday, we had a new procurement manager finally start for us, so I would say that we're closer than we've ever been to some of these improvements. We just completed the implementation of an ERP financial software application that includes a contract management database integrated with our AP system. We're currently implementing another procurement tool that has a completely separate contract management database. So in terms of the resources that the city has applied to process improvements, the city has funded and we have resources available to address these types of things. So yes, it's true that that payment didn't go through proper vetting procedures, it didn't go through proper protocols, but it's also true that we're literally making those improvements right now. Like I say, we just had the new position start yesterday, and we have the technology now in place that historically we did not. Separately is the status of the project, and it's also true that again, based on the nature of the procurement deficiencies, we did not catch it in time. We didn't have the, any sort of triggering as to the contract status, and here we are months after dealing with a contract that the term has expired a long time ago, September 30th, 2022. Actually, I think it was October 3rd, 2022. But in any case, we're well past the contract termination clause. However, we are still actively working closely with the vendor. We are at approximately 75% completion, according to them. Just within the last week or so, we've been in close conversations with them to where we were planning to, if at all necessary, go pick up one of the two barges. So one of the two is complete, is ready to be delivered, and the second is currently being held up by some permitting issues. But we're at approximately 75% completion status. And I have some ideas as to how we could remedy the contract status. I prefer to work with the city attorney's office on those and bring that back to you. But just in terms of practical purposes, in terms of managing the project and dealing with the vendor, we're very close, I'll say, 75% completed through the project. I can also tell you as it pertains to fireworks, we mentioned that in the course of the conversation. Fireworks were one of the several reasons that were cited as justifying this project. And, you mentioned the drones as the alternative. Based on the recent poll, it seems that fireworks are in favor over drones. And so based on the status with the vendor, we could potentially even get one of the barges in place for the July 4th firework, or I think it's July 2nd, potentially fireworks show coming up. So yes, it's true that there are some T's that were not crossed and some I's not dotted. We can work on those. We have the ability to improve those processes. We have the ability to remedy the contract, again, subject to the city attorney's office. But in terms of the project, we are still actively working on it. So I'll leave it at that and see where any further discussion goes.
Is there an estimate on the delivery date for Barge 2?
I don't know if we have that estimated date, but again, it's in a permitting status, and I don't know that date.
Who approved that first payment?
So, based on our internal procedures, department directors approve partial payments on open projects. And so the department director approved the payment, routed it to finance. Now, tonight I'm wearing the temporary city manager hat, but wearing my typical CFO hat, I recognize the need to fill gaps. And so where I know there are any sort of weaknesses in processes, procedures, even if it's just perceived by myself, I will and often do step in to provide, additional reconciliation, additional analysis, additional vetting. In this case, I personally didn't catch it. So, but that is the process. Partial payments can be approved by department directors, and that's what happened in this case.
And when did our current vacancy take place for procurement?
I don't have that date, but I can tell you it's turned over twice. And I think the position was created about 3 years ago. I know for a fact the procurement ordinances were changed in July of 2020, so less than 3 years ago. And the position has turned over twice since that time.
So did we have somebody who was in that position in September, October, November of last year?
I don't know that offhand. I mean, what I would say is whether the position was filled or not, again, we're talking about cultural, procedural changes that are pending in nature, and I wouldn't, even if the position was filled at the time, I wouldn't necessarily try and identify one individual as being at fault. It's just a control process that needs to be refined and is in the process of being refined.
Yeah, I mean, we're not trying to blame any one individual. It seemed like the justification, part of the justification was that we had turnover in the position, but if there was somebody actually in the position and then there was somebody responsible for making sure that we're not 6 months out of contract and $80,000 behind in liquidated damages.
Yeah, again, I can tell you that even if or when the position was filled, we would not have had that information available. We didn't have we have not had a contract database in place. We wouldn't have had the tools available, whether that position was filled or not.
Right, and the assistant city manager and I have talked about this, and, how do you, it comes down, I think, as he mentioned, to procurement practice, who's negotiating with suppliers, who's committing the city, who has authority to commit the city externally. These are all things that need to be, I think, better refined. There's got to be a series of delegations, but who actually has that authority to do that? And then how do you get, like with any process, how do you get highlights when things are not running right? Some exception reports or proactive. As the assistant city manager said, proactive contract reports, from a contract database that allows visibility so that we can take that proactive action so that we're not looking backwards and trying to fix and then coming to a city attorney and say, okay, now what do we do?
Yeah, I just want to clarify. So, within I mentioned the procurement code changes that were made. Included in that is the specific assignment of those roles and responsibilities to the procurement manager. So, typically, what should have happened, but again, we haven't been there. What should have happened was that request for the payment would have been vetted, would have been brought to the attention of the procurement manager. Procurement manager could have potentially, would have first refused to make the payment, but if it turned out to be a clause that inevitably was actually going to kill the project, maybe there's some negotiation. So all of that process is identified and is in the process of being improved.
So we had a procurement officer. We have one now.
Correct.
We missed the contract deadline because we don't have the correct software. Is that accurate?
Yeah, correct. Well, it's...
So who's responsible for making sure that these systems are in place and the proper procedures are in place and that the procedures and the processes that were developed are then actually implemented and supervised and make sure that people are following, whether it's procurement or something else, following the procedure that's put in place? Because you'll have to forgive me here, it just, the city's been around for, when did we incorporate? 57. Okay, so we've been around for a while, and we've had procurement for a while. And I just use my calendar, and I put in the notes myself for next week, Monday. I don't have a software for keeping, it's just I have a calendar, and I just put on the calendar, this is due on Friday, on Monday, as a reminder for yourself, check in on it. And so the question is, who's responsible for making sure that we have procedures in place? If we do not have procedures in place, why do we not have procedures in place after 80 years, 70 years? And then who's responsible for making sure those procedures are followed?
Yeah, I think I would respectfully defer, some of this conversation to, between the city manager and city commissioners as it pertains to some of these topics. But as far as my own particular involvement, I can tell you that I've outlined some of the protocols for departmental director approvals and the roles and responsibilities of the procurement manager. It is the case that we have hundreds of projects, hundreds of contracts. They are, I'll just leave it at that. We have a lot of contracts, a lot of projects. We have staff resource constraints, and I'll leave it at that.
So Mr. Mayor, to answer, I think, your question specifically, the city charter states that the city manager has responsibility for the operations of the city, right, under our business model. The commission does not have operational responsibility.
Exactly.
The buck stops at the city manager. And in fairness, the city manager is not here. So I think what's on the table today is, I think we have two choices. Number one is we ask the city attorney to work on some sort of retrospective contract that takes us back to the expiration date forward that we signed today with a retrospective effective date and continue on, or it sounds harsh, but the other solution, the other possibility, and maybe there's a third, is claim liquidated damages and walk away, we're done.
Sounds to me like it's something for the city attorney. I mean, we have contracts in place and we need to enforce those contracts. They're legal documents, so to the extent that there's enforceability provisions, we usually hand it over to the lawyer to enforce the contract and they ask us, which option do we want? Do we want the money or do we want the project done?
And I had that discussion with city
And
attorney.
I think the question is, does the commission want the barges?
But just to, if I take a step back to Commissioner Marone's point, we had that discussion, because when I was confused. I reached out to the city attorney's office, and the response was, and please correct me if I misstate this, we would be within our right to claim liquidated damages.
It's in there. It's a clause. They're currently in breach of contract. I mean, there's no questioning that.
So that now
the direction is really, do we try to make it work and get the barges, they're 75% complete, or
do we use it as leverage?
Do we use it as, I mean, do you allow us
Why don't
to
we get an update as to where the barges are and get some more better information as to can these things be completed or what's going on before we make a decision?
So at this point, considering, and I did speak to Vince about this prior, considering the contract is clearly a breach at this point without us being delivered the services, I think we just demand performance and we come back with an update if that's the direction you want to go. If the direction is we don't want the barges, we don't need them, then that's a different, but with them being 75% complete, I think we just sit down with them, try to come up with a game plan, and then update you.
I think that should be the first step. And again,
With the understanding that staff has been communicating with them, I don't want to make it seem like they haven't. But yeah, they're clearly in breach of contract.
Do we want the barges?
We do. That's why we approved it in the first place.
Yeah,
I
and
figured. We want the barges.
they were going to be used not only for fireworks, but we're replacing a pier that was torn down, fishing pier in Egan Park. They were going to be used for other things around the city, seawall assessments, repairs, putting out the swim buoys and things like that. So
there were 4 or 5 reasons.
Yeah. So it wasn't just the fireworks.
Right.
But
So if we want the barges, then we probably just need to let them know that we're going to enforce the liquidation provisions unless they have them done by X date. We need to have one done before 7/2/2023.
I think one is completed.
Yeah, delivered.
The contract does call for delivery.
Okay.
So
what I'll do is
update us, yeah?
if I'm hearing you, and we don't need a motion, but if I'm hearing you clearly, then we will work directly with the vendor and come back with an update.
Yeah.
And I guess just then, just one other comment I had is that we really need to take a look at all of our contracts, and which I know you have. We got the new software, and that ERP system was a big implementation, but it'll pay off certainly for us. Do we have any others that are in this kind of situation? Just so we stay ahead of the curve, whether it's in procurement or buying goods and services, even our employment contracts and/or contractors. I mean, they're all, to me, under the same umbrella, maybe different departments, kind of all the same flavor of ice cream, different flavors of ice cream, I should say.
Understood.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Mayor?
Audience comments?
Yeah. Mr. Kurzman?
I'll be brief, and I don't have a slide.
You used up 4 minutes the first time and 3.5 the second time, so you're down to a minute and a half.
Presentation while the presentation
we
was
were
happening.
impressed, though,
but
using the watch.
I just wanted to add, because I heard a comment earlier about not wanting the second barge because you were waiting for some permits. I mean, it sounds like you really want to get possession, and I don't even know how big these barges are, but it's just a boat. So maybe when you're doing this, you could have them deliver it, and maybe as a provision, because of these damages, they could leave it on the trailer somewhere, or they commit to helping you to then move it to the get it in the water for you after it's stored or something, just because you want to get possession, not delay it for permits. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, John. Any further discussion on 8C? Any discussion item 8D, employee evaluation. So I know last commission meeting, there was a discussion about the city manager's evaluation, upcoming evaluation, and the request was made that we delay that evaluation for a few weeks to give Commissioner Marone and myself additional time to evaluate the city manager's performance. So one of the questions that I had for the rest of the commission, oftentimes we do evaluations, top-down, so for the commission to the city manager, and my question is, do we have something that is a bottom-up evaluation, where maybe there's a survey? I mean, I think I would find it helpful for me if we had, an evaluation by the people that serve under whoever the individual is, and provide a performance evaluation from the people that person is supervising. It's whether you call it a 360 evaluation or a top-down, bottom-up evaluation, rather than just having a one-sided evaluation. I would find it, useful to hear from the people that have worked with that individual for 6 months, a year, 2, 3 years, and see how they would evaluate that performance. It could be, an online survey. It could be anonymous. It doesn't have to, so the question is that something that we have in place? Is it something that we would find useful? Or is it just me? And then are there any issues with
Yeah, my mind is, I'd have to look into the legality.
I see that as an HR issue.
That's the first, I was looking to see if Carrie was here. That's the first thing I'm thinking about. Not saying no.
Yeah. So there's a question.
I can tell you we don't have that. I've never been involved in something like that up until.
I have.
No, I meant at the city, because he asked if we had that process in place. I've never heard of that happening.
From the business world, coming from the business world, that's a very common practice is, you've got your boss evaluating you, and then the people that you're responsible for, they evaluate, how well are you at managing them. And
when I say HR issue, I mean, I think it's from a development standpoint, where that process needs to be developed through HR, and then probably needs to be anonymous, and then come to us, 1 through 5. How do you rate your, 5 is the best, 1 is the worst?
But I think the charter precludes us from getting involved in operational staffing, feedback, et cetera.
No, correct. Like the city manager, city attorney, and city clerk are at your purview, right? But if you wanted to implement something for like directors, and then I think there's a very fine line that you would be crossing. But these are all things that I can look into.
Yeah. But we're not asking, we're not directing any one individual staff person to do anything. And in fact, that non-interference clause specifically mentions that we are allowed to ask questions. And so one of the questions I would like to hear from the other 120 employees is, how is it working with this individual? Is it everything you ever thought it would be? I think those are legitimate, fair questions. And HR can be the one to implement, design the questions, do all of that. But again, if the rest of the commission thinks that's a valuable information, great. If not.
In my experience, and I've been through this, and the company I work for got rid of it after a while, because it degraded. The first year it worked, first couple of years it worked well, and then it degraded to a point where it just wasn't useful anymore. Because the real key to me, it's always good for everybody to get feedback. How am I doing? This is good, this is bad, you need to work on improving in this area. Anonymous helps the people who don't want to put their name on it. It also gives license to people who wouldn't put their name on something that, and then how is it being used? Because if it comes then to us or a superior of that person, some people are going to use it, I'm going to get them. And then it just becomes a negative. Mm-hmm. And so it's good. It can be done. It can be very useful. I think maybe this is something for our HR manager to design, because if you don't do it right, what is meant to be a developmental tool turns into a negative and a dissatisfier, and it doesn't achieve the objective that you want it to achieve. So, it depends. I think is my answer. Sorry.
As far as the HR, it makes no difference to me how you all evaluate the city manager, but as far as the HR piece of it, yes, if you give HR the direction of developing a system for you, anonymous, whatever else, the answer is yes, we could do that if that's your pleasure, but...
I feel like I can evaluate the city manager without that sufficiently, especially the more and more contact I have with them. The more, and I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'm going back and forth on it, because it sounds good, and I like more data, more feedback is better. I just keep coming back to, I think it's an HR issue, because I'm thinking if someone is having a problem with them, they need to be reporting them to HR. And that needs to be a process. There's a process in place that those issues get resolved. And I don't think I want to be the one using their issues as a conduit for evaluation.
Or the other side gives the employee the opportunity to say, this is the best person I've ever worked for in my life.
Sure.
Yep.
But that can be the case, but us as representatives of the residents, it may not be influential at all, because we have different priorities. And so if they think the city manager, any employee, any supervisor is the greatest thing since sliced bread, we're happy they're happy, but that doesn't necessarily help us evaluate or assist us in our evaluation of our relationship with the city manager vis-a-vis the responsibilities that we have in our district and the city as a whole. That's the way I see it.
I'm also not sure if all 120 employees would be the right people to ask. I can see department directors, they work with the city manager. I just don't know enough about how much interaction does every employee really have with the city manager to really evaluate the city manager.
Probably not much.
Yeah, I think I misunderstood. Was this meant to be for the city manager or for anybody in a leadership position?
It could be for anyone in leadership, but this is the one that's before us now. Well, we have the city clerk as well, but that's 3 individuals that we can have in one-on-one conversations with versus
Yep.
the other 120 is a lot more, be a lot more work. And then that is a valid point about, maybe direct subordinates or maybe second
That's what I
level.
was thinking. I mean, they would be the ones to offer the most information, I would think.
So can you check with our HR manager and see what is possible?
I guess I'd like to have a little bit more clarity. We can develop anything you'd like. If you want to limit it to direct staff, that's one thing.
We have this kind of on the front burner. I don't want to do anything that's going to delay his evaluation. We're already past the deadline on it. I know we're allowed to extend it. I guess we can work on parallel tracks, how we want to evaluate him down the road and move forward with our evaluations like we normally would, like this commission normally would. I say we haven't done it before. Like this commission normally would if the mayor's, if that's works for you.
Yeah. No, I think we're still 30 days out. And part of the first question was, do we have anything in place in the first place? I guess the answer is no.
No.
So
In the short term, can we pick up the phone and call? I mean, there's not a lot of people to call.
But then also, maybe we can just get an answer on that for next time. Like, what would it take to implement something like that?
Sure.
All right. Next, we have number 9, reports. City clerk, please.
I just wanted to remind you of the doodle poll that I sent out regarding the 2 dates for the Sunshine presentation that city legal staff and I are putting on together. I know all of you have responded either with a specific date or you're in an unavailable time. I have heard from some staff and some of the advisory board appointees, and I really ask that you work with your appointees and remind them that this is a required training that we're asking that they attend. And Matthew and I also understand that it may not be an available option for them, and I have a list of people who are not able to attend, and legal and I are going to work together to create an alternative date or something that we can provide with them so we have assurance that they have at least seen, watched, and have answered their questions. And that's all I have.
Actually, if you don't mind, would you also be able to address?
Oh yeah, I didn't really want I didn't really want to. That's why I just hand passed it out because I am so over that. I really am.
Is there a reason we can't move forward with the 23rd?
No, there's no reason. I just really want you guys to tell me at this point.
So that seems to be the date that we have the most people available. Would everybody be agreeable to Tuesday, the 23rd, for the next joint planning board and city commission workshop?
I am.
I'm a yes on here.
Yes, just checking 3.
Ward, you're a yes.
Yeah, no, I am a yes. I want to make sure I still have it on my calendar.
I cannot attend.
You got so fed up, boom, still got the red pen.
Who cannot attend? I'm sorry.
I cannot attend. I have to work. I'll be.
Just so the commission understands, you have, I believe, a budget kickoff on the 22nd all day.
Correct.
So then you would have 2 full days of meetings back to back, just pointing that out. We'll be there.
I worked really hard on it.
We'll be there regardless. I just know budget workshops are
exhausting.
Very interesting.
I like them.
We'll be there whenever, because we're going to be at the budget workshop too. Sorry, Amber.
It's okay. She's going to bribe us.
I mean, Commissioner Marone, you're not even on this list.
With public sandwiches.
What's that?
So you're not even on this list.
Notice that? It's not even, I'm not even identified. Marone didn't make the cut.
So, you find that time when all 5 of us can be here.
It's really hard for me when I have to work.
Yeah.
Because I can't, because I have lawyers who have court deadlines and they have to complete the mediation, and if I tell them no, they're like, well, the judge is going to call you because we have a deadline and we scheduled it with you. And they're scheduling out till September.
Is there a different date that we can?
There isn't. I mean, after work,
Yeah.
But it's got to be like after 4:30.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is I make myself available most days. It's going to have to be like at 4:30 on.
So on the 23rd, would you be able to do 4:30?
Yeah, I can do 4:30.
So if we do a 4:30 to 5:45, because I think what is on the agenda for that meeting, please correct me if I'm wrong, it's a matter of having discussion of how do we move forward, if the commission still chooses to move forward, so maybe we don't need a full 3 hours, and if we can have an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half, and then if necessary, and would that be agreeable? 4:30?
Yes, for me.
That's good for me. That should be good for everybody, because...
Yep. And then if we need more time, then we need more time. But otherwise, we're looking at middle to end of June.
I don't want to push it off.
Yep.
Do we know the availability of the board?
I think they're on.
At 4:30.
Well, they're available from 3 to 5:30, so...
5:30, so...
All right, I'm tired. Yeah.
I'm sure they won't mind coming later.
An hour later.
Okay.
So the 23rd from 4:30 to...
Yes, I'll send out your calendar.
Okay.
Thank you. And for the ethics training, the last point, the previous point, is there an email that we can forward to our board members, or should we develop?
Or could you just let us know if one doesn't respond?
Whatever's easiest for you. If you just want to send us all an email then we forward, sure.
All right, city manager, please.
You.
Just the only update for me is that Alex will be back on Monday.
All right. Nice. City attorney?
No, just to reiterate what Amber said, this presentation is really important. We have a lot of board member changes. We're doing it different this year. Last year, I went individually to every single board and gave the same 25 to 30-minute presentation. So it's online, but please urge your board members. It's important. They don't have to take the class like you do. We are requiring them to sign off on this, whether they can attend or not. They're going to have to sign something acknowledging that they've at least watched it. It's going to be very informative. So please, just do the best you can to get your board members here. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take that list. All right. Commissioner Grouse?
All clear.
Commissioner Grill?
I had a couple things. I'll make it quick because it's getting late. We had some construction at the intersection of 64th and Gulf Winds Drive. Last week, emergency, I call it a sinkhole. My Public Works Director may not agree with me that it was a sinkhole, but it was work that needed to be done. It had some significant traffic interruption. The good news is the work was done and the road's open. There was some problems, and some of you may have heard that some residents or drivers received moving violations for entering an area where it said do not enter, people not understanding how to get home. So the city manager, acting city manager, and I spoke about it. He took some actions. By midweek, the signage was improved. Spoke with the sheriff's office. Unfortunately, people did receive moving violations. I know some of them some residents are quite upset about it. And I reached out to the city attorney. He would, of course, the city doesn't fix tickets. Someone asked me, do we fix tickets? No, we don't fix tickets. City attorney's looking at some of the citations, but that doesn't change any responsibility of meeting the requirements of the citation. Lesson learned, maybe some things we can do a little bit differently next time, but it was an emergency situation that wasn't, obviously emergencies aren't planned for, and they're planned for very quickly. As someone reminded us earlier, but turtle nesting season is on May 1st, started May 1st, so more information's on the city website, plenty of information there, so be kind to the turtles. I did want to take a moment to, at the very beginning of the meeting, we talked about, we had employees that we recognized, employees of the quarter, as well as the Good Citizen Award, and I wanted to just point out and say congratulations to a member of our staff that is is graduating with their bachelor's degree this weekend. It's our city clerk who's sitting there and blushing at the same time. But it's really a great great achievement for her. Balancing everything that she does for the city. I don't know how, at the same time also recently, or not so recently, received the MMC, the Masters of Municipal Clerk. So we really appreciate and congratulate you for all your efforts, and great job. Keep it up. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Frizlowski?
Thank you, Mayor. Just one thing, Bella Vista is going to have their annual picnic on Saturday at 5 o'clock at Bill Carrata Park. Everybody who wants to stop in is welcome to stop in. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Moreau?
Real quickly, I had some complaints about cleanup at the dog beach. I'm working with the city to see if we can accomplish some type of equipment to get over to the dog beach and clean up, like we clean up the regular parts of the beach. I think there's an equipment issue in getting it over the seawall to get there. I actually have resident neighbors who are willing to clean it up themselves. I'm in conversations with the city about garbage overflowing from the weekend trash cans. We're working on that. And some parking enforcement. We just got just new COs planted over there, just beautiful on Fifth Avenue, and a nice barrier with ropes and everything. And Sunday, somebody stole one of the ropes, and they trucked right over the brand-new COs that were just planted. So we're going to try and make some alternative plans to see if we can't prevent that again. Gulfport Gabber called me today. They're writing an article about beach renourishment, asked me if I knew whether we were still getting beach renourishment in the fall. I said I had talked to Jennifer McMahon. She knew no different than, according to Mike Clark, we were still getting that beach renourishment in the fall. So I said, that's all I know. And then she just wanted to talk about the other beaches. I guess there was this article in the Tampa Bay Times, so she's kind of piggybacking on that. So that's all I said. Don Cesar Place, Hummers Association, which is part of your district, part of my district, they have a meeting tomorrow night.
That's right.
Over at Suntan Art Center / Don Vista. They asked me if I'd come, and I'll be over there at 6 o'clock tomorrow and meet those folks. A lot of them haven't met me before. And I previously had mentioned there's a conditional use application pending for the red, white, and booze. There's some things in the works. I've been dealing with Jennifer and code enforcement, law enforcement, city attorney on moving that forward before it comes to the commission. I have suggested to the parties involved that if they feel comfortable doing it, they might want to get out in front of it and just contact the other commissioners and the mayor just to let them know what their respective positions are, so you're not hearing it for the first time when it comes before you at the commission meeting. So that's in the works. The city's handling that. And so I just wanted you guys to be aware of it. This conditional use permit has to do with amplified music. So it's something y'all probably, who have had to deal with the Zamora before, are familiar with, the noise ordinance and the conditional use permit. So it's surrounding that. So that's the reason I was over there the previous Wednesday, and more to come. So that's about it.
Thank you.
City Attorney, is it appropriate for us to talk to applicants about CUPs in advance?
Lobbyists.
Is that lobbying?
Interesting question that came up. I've already discussed this with the clerk. I was going to wait till Alex gets back. He has a lot to catch up on. But what we're going to do as part of the CUP application is we're going to include the lobbyist registration form, because I can only assume that you've probably been, which is why I talked about the wharf today, that you may be reached out by these applicants or their engineers or and technically it's lobbyists because they're trying to get you to obviously say yes to their application. So we were going to put them on notice, and then like Amber does so graciously, she notifies you all when someone files a lobbyist registration. So at least if you see that name, you will notify, you'll be notified, and then you can add it to your disclosure log. That hasn't happened yet. It just came across my desk this week, but that's kind of the idea.
I've had residents asking me, can I talk to the other commissioners? I said, you're welcome to call them. I'm not going to tell you not to.
I'm more focused on the applicants and their engineers and their...
Be a difference between the residents.
Yeah, that's what I've been talking, it's really, it's the residents.
Yeah.
That I've...
Constituents.
Yeah.
Have at it. I mean...
But again, how do we, if we get an email from somebody, how do we know if it's an applicant or if it's a resident?
That's what we're trying to resolve through the CUP application process.
Okay.
So we include the lobbyist registration. If you even think about talking to the commissioners about your project prior to the meeting,
a good idea.
Please fill this out, register with the city, and then you'll all be notified the moment that they register, so that hopefully the name clicks.
Yeah, I mean, we all receive emails today from across the city on lots of different subjects.
Yeah.
It would be possible to add a notification when a conditional use is submitted? Just as a trigger to, hey, by the way, you might have people contacting you about this. Because sometimes you just wake up and it's like, here it is.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah, if we could be, I guess, patient for maybe 3 days. I don't want to make an administrative decision without Alex here. I can't talk to Vince about it, but that's the idea. So yeah, we could also include I guess we could tell you when the problem with the applications is sometimes they take a while, or they end up withdrawing them, so you don't really know until it's finally approved. but we can come up with some ideas and provide that feedback.
But yeah, I think it's, to that point, I think it's good to know, just so we know what's going on. I mean, to be, so Joe and Mary submitted a CUP. Okay, at least I know then when a resident comes up and says, hey, do you know what Joe and Mary's doing? No, I don't know. Well, how come you don't know that they submitted a CUP?
That's why I said it tonight, because I didn't want you guys to...
No, I appreciate that. Yes, we need to know. Be quiet now.
All right, I do not have anything, so meeting adjourned.
Thank you.